destroyed or made inoperable.
We're not allowed to take home any war souvenirs, so what we've done is cut the stocks off the weapons and give them to the individual Marines that captured the weapons, so they can take the stock home and maybe make a desk plate or a name tag, and that is a memory for a souvenir. So we're not going to take any weapons. That's what we've done, and that's why they look so bad.
But others say some of the seized weapons look bad because of whose hands they were in.
Some units look like they took care of their weapons. Others, they just been left to sit. And I think that's an indicator of why they pulled out the way they did. I think they were poorly led, and I don't think they had the will or believed that we had the will that we did to come in and sacrifice what we would more than they were willing to sacrifice, which was obviously not too much.
Not too much will, but a ton of weapons. And some think if the Iraqis had the belly to fight, they could have put up a good one.
Do you think the Iraqis could have put up a fight if they wanted to with all this stuff?
They probably would have kicked our butt with all the stuff they had. We went back in there by the oil fields, and there was bunkers and bunkers of mortar rounds. There was like hundreds of bunkers of mortar rounds and arty rounds, everything out there. I think they probably would have put up a good fight or kicked our butt, probably.
I think they'd have done a pretty good job, but I still think we'd have beat them.
What the Iraqis didn't have the stomach for was air superiority. And by the time the ground invasion began, they were more than ready to leave their spoils behind in the hands of the victors. Greg Lamont, CNN, Kuwait City.
Still ahead, oil fires blacken the skies over Kuwait and pose a danger to the environment.
That Michael? Yeah, starts college next year. So's mine.
A 6-week-long ordeal in a London hospital. In their most recent interview, they recount numerous beatings with canes and sticks. And they say the Allied bombings scared them even more. One bomb hit a building where they were held. Doctors say the 4 are doing remarkably well and may be free to go home in a week.
Complete peace has not yet reached Kuwait City. While children have resumed playing in the streets and many Iraqi soldiers surrendered peacefully, there is some resistance. One U.S. officer says it will be 5 or 6 days before Kuwaiti and U.S. troops secure the capital city. Trucks armed with loudspeakers are telling Iraqis and Palestinians that they will be treated well if they surrender. Elsewhere in the country, it looks like a total solar eclipse as the oil fires continue burning. CNN's John Sweeney has this report.
Residents of the small Kuwaiti town of El Hamadi have not seen the sunshine for 6 weeks, and this is why. Located about 25 miles south of Kuwait City, El Hamadi is surrounded by some of the country's largest oil fields. Oil fields set ablaze with a vengeance by the Iraqis. For the residents of Al Hamadi, that has meant 6 weeks of surviving amid thick clouds of acrid smoke. Al Hamadi's pets are beginning to turn the color of smoke, and even its healthiest residents are finding it difficult to breathe.
I feel suffocated and it's hard to breathe.
Even in the country's capital city, some distance from the burning wells, the pollution is being spread by winter rains.
We had actually black rain, just like in Europe they have acid rain. We had black rain. It made all the buildings, all the trees, all the surroundings look black.
Normal winter rains are essential for Kuwait's desert vegetation. The polluted version threatens its existence. From a distance, all of Kuwait's foliage appears to have a darkish hue. When one approaches the foliage, the reason why is apparent. Along the Persian Gulf Coast toward Saudi Arabia, as much as 200 million gallons of oil continues to kill marine and animal life, a lasting legacy of Saddam Hussein. In Kuwait City, tons of garbage, uncollected since the invasion, poses an increasing health hazard to a population still reveling in liberation. The health hazard in El Hamadi, meanwhile, borders on unbearable for citizens with no place else to go.
We cannot leave our house and everything and move out, and our stuff is just, it's not so easy. It's not so easy.
John Sweeney, CNN, Kuwait.
In Iraq, there are some signs that life is beginning to return to normal. The state-run radio says electricity has been restored to some areas and schools will reopen in about a week. But as CNN's Christian Amanpour reports, severe problems still exist with the basic necessities. A reminder, her report was monitored by the Iraqi government.
The biggest arguments you hear in Baghdad these days are over water. People trying to get as much as they can of what has become a precious commodity, but there is no fresh running water in their homes. Children dip their feet in the filthy stuff stagnating in fountains. Women use it to wash with and even drink. 7 water treatment plants serve Baghdad's 4.5 million citizens. This is the main one. Officials say it's the only one operating today, and then only at a quarter of its capacity. That's because its power station was bombed in the early days of the war, and it now relies on one generator.
If this stops, it means the central part of Baghdad in Rasafa will be prevented from water.
As it is, Iraqi and United Nations officials say that each citizen now gets 40 liters of water a day, compared to 400 liters before the war. And that, they say, isn't even properly treated because there isn't enough chlorine or alum, now that bombed-out industrial plants can't produce them. In addition, raw sewage is spewing into the rivers around Baghdad. Again, there's no electricity to power the sewage treatment plants. Still, women wash their clothes along the river banks. UN officials here worry about diseases spreading, such as cholera and typhoid, now that the weather is getting warmer. The government has just ordered electricity and water to be provided as quickly and to as many people as possible. And since the ceasefire, authorities are coming under tremendous political pressure to restore the basic commodities.
You could imagine the stress and the pressure put on this department to make water available at any cost. And we have to do this at specified standards.
So officials are appealing for help from other governments and UN organizations for medicines and especially chemicals for treating water. At this plant, they say they have enough chlorine only for another 15 days. Christiana Manpour, CNN, Baghdad.
Just ahead, we'll check the weather in the USA. And in sports, did defending world champions the Detroit Pistons snap their 5-game losing streak? We know, and we'll tell you.
Tonight, U.S. companies selling weapons to potential enemies.
This morning, their vehicles stood bearing Red Crescent flags. Group for the Iraqi delegation coming to the peace talks nearby. They moved south with similar flags just after 11 o'clock, passing along a road which is studded with the wreckage of war, and past a signpost pointing to Kuwait. They were not the only Iraqis moving south. We met a van full of resistance militia from nearby Basra, fighting openly now to overthrow Saddam Hussein.
They are hungry, the people there. They try to get some food to them.
Who are these men? Why are they? Who are they? Why have they got guns?
It's the resistance.
Resistance against what?
ضد منو? Saddam and the government there.
As we moved deeper into Iraq among the ruins of strafed vehicles, dazed civilians were coming south with eyewitness accounts of Basra's anti-Saddam uprising.
Boys, they are shooting everybody. They have guns. They shoot the pictures. They control, and the army control Basra border. And I believe there's some Iranians with them. But they said 3,000, but I think more. And I came from the opposite side of the river. It's mass. It's upside down. You know, I can't explain.
The car of that Kuwaiti family had been hit by gunfire just south of Basra. All eyewitnesses, and now some refugees from the violence, told us pro-Iranian Islamic groups were at the forefront of the uprising against Saddam's authority in Iraq's second city. Basra, battered by bombing, now buffeted again as security forces and rebels clash. But further north, deep into Iraqi-held territory, we found this, a battle-ready tank group deployed as a bodyguard for the commanders meeting with the Americans. We turned up unannounced, but there was no gunfire or arrests, but warm greetings by men who said yes, they'd fight again, but yes, they'd had years of war and peace felt good.
We hope there will always be peace. Who doesn't want peace?
The Iraqi people feel happy if we have peace, which will guarantee our constitution.
But when we asked him if the invasion of Kuwait had been a good idea, he received a tap on the shoulder.
I'm sorry, I cannot answer the question because you call it invasion and we call it something else.
Some took advantage of the waiting to rid themselves of the incessant desert dust. Others began eating unorthodox rations, happy it appeared that their country was at peace. Behind these soldiers stood a picture of Saddam Hussein next to a compound all but flattened, and close by an American jeep kept watch on the Iraqi tanks.
These Iraqi troops now wait whilst their leaders discuss peace terms just a few miles to the south of where we're standing. Meanwhile, all around us, there are armed resistance groups, and to the north, reports of civil unrest in Basra and other cities.
After several hours, their commanders returned from the talks. They said nothing but got into convoy and began to roll north to report back to their central command. And almost immediately, the tank column itself moved out of its position. The barrels were now pointing for home. The shadowing operation was over, and they moved north past the hulks of tanks that didn't survive war. We followed as far as these tank positions close to the troubled town of Basra before being ordered to return to Kuwait. Alex Thompson, ITN, Kuwait.
Allied forces are now on the Kuwaiti island of Falkaya, east of Kuwait City. Today, they captured more than 1,400 Iraqi prisoners of war. U.S. military officials say Navy helicopters flew over the island for 2 days using loudspeakers to instruct the Iraqis on how to surrender. They say Allied forces haven't yet claimed complete control over the island, but a Kuwaiti flag has been raised. Iraq's acceptance of a United Nations ceasefire resolution is a reality. Baghdad Radio announced today Iraq will honor its obligations under the truce. Baghdad Radio is no longer the only Iraqi institution communicating news to that nation. Iraqi television is now broadcasting daily between 5 p.m. and midnight local time. The resumption of television broadcasts apparently can be credited to Iraqi President Saddam Hussein. Pictures of Hussein meeting with his information minister and deputy chief of staff were broadcast Saturday night. Baghdad Radio says Hussein met with officials today to discuss the task of rebuilding his war-ravaged country. The United States has proven its military might in the Middle East, but won't try to force a peace plan onto the region. That message from the U.S. Secretary of State James Baker, scheduled to leave Wednesday for a post-war tour of the Middle East and the Soviet Union. The Soviets want an international conference on the Arab-Israeli question and other regional issues, but Washington is approaching that idea cautiously.
The position of the United States on an international conference is that it might be useful at an appropriate time, provided it's properly structured. And we want to see what the views and ideas of all of our coalition partners are, including France, including the Arab countries, and including Israel.
Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak says Middle Eastern nations need to stop thinking about settling old scores. He called on all nations in the region to lay down their nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons. French President Francois Mitterrand said the United Nations should take on the task of ensuring stability in the Middle East. In a televised
sums up the war this way.
We validated our training, and I think we validated our tactics and techniques. Quite obviously, we validated our leadership. Now, that's not to say that it was a perfect battle. There are some areas, I'm sure, that are going to be uncovered as time goes on.
Though the Pentagon can't confirm this, the Iraqis may have already kept one of the promises of the truce agreement. There are reports Iraq released 10 POWs, including 6 Americans.
And demonstrations continue against Saddam Hussein's leadership in the southern part of Iraq. But tonight, the whereabouts of Saddam Hussein are still unknown. However, Baghdad Television has released brand new pictures of Saddam Hussein. These are the first pictures of Hussein shown in more than a week. They were reportedly taken somewhere in Iraq on Saturday. Another videotape allegedly shot today shows Saddam chairing a meeting of his Revolutionary Command Council. He is reportedly talking about the ceasefire talks and plans for construction.
Still to come on the Channel 5 News, 2 deaths linked to cyanide-laced cold capsules are prompting a nationwide recall.
No big surprise for the Harold Washington Party as it names its candidate for mayor.
And later on, Arthur Murray, the famed...
Beware. In nearly every case of tampering that I'm aware of, if consumers had been paying attention and looked at the product before they took it, they wouldn't have had a problem, because there was something evident about that that would tell them that it's not like the other ones in the package.
But not all consumers will heed the warning.
It's 1 in a million. I mean, maybe there's some nut out there doing it, but it's not gonna bother me. I'm not gonna change my habits at all.
The FDA is advising consumers to return Sudafed 12-hour capsules carrying a lot code of 8U2846 with a November 1991 expiration date. Those numbers are on the blister pack and not on the outer boxes, which have different numbers. 84 years of automotive history is proving to be no match for changing times in Detroit, Michigan. Demolition crews have leveled an 8-story section of Chrysler's historic Jefferson Avenue assembly plant. They're making room for part of Chrysler's new $1 billion Jefferson North factory. We'll be back with sports in just a moment.
This is CNN Headline News.
American Express now gives you an easy way to apply for membership. All you have to do is call.
Can I apply for the card over the phone?
Yes, you can. All I'll need is some information.
Great.
For those who qualify, the card comes with a world of privileges. Privileges that give you an extra measure of financial flexibility.
Do you like it?
I love it.
Then we'll take it.
Lost, stolen, or damaged. Privileges that protect the things you buy up to $1,000 automatically for 90 days. Privileges that include help when you need it.
American Express, I lost my wallet, my cash, and all my cards.
We can have another card for you by tomorrow. American Express?
To apply, simply call 1-800-THE-CARD. We'll take your application over the phone and start processing it right away.
That was so easy. Thank you. And thank you for calling American Express. On the card, sir?
No need to wrap it.
Membership has its privileges, so call 1-800-THE-CARD now.
Hey, Mrs. Susan Amato of Teaneck, New Jersey writes, I really want a Volkswagen Jetta, but what exactly does Farfignugan look like? Well, Mrs. Amato, did you see it? Farfignugan. It's what makes a car, a Volkswagen.
Listen to the trees. They're trying to tell us something about what our polluted air is doing to them and to us. Fortunately, there's an answer. Natural gas. The cleanest burning fossil fuel we have. It can help save the air and everything that lives in it. Listen to the trees, because air pollution is a problem hanging over all of us. Use natural gas and we'll all breathe easier.
I'm Paul Runnels. CNN Headline Sports. The Detroit Pistons' losing streak is over at 5. The defending champs beat the Clippers at the Palace Sunday night, 107-98. Joe Dumars shaked and baked his way for 26. Danny Manning had 31 for the Clippers. The Houston Rockets ended a 6-year drought Sunday by winning at the Forum. Kenny Smith poured in 34 in Houston's 104-95 triumph. The last time they had beaten the Lakers there was January of 1985. David Robinson returned home to the Washington area and put on a show for family and friends. Robinson had 26 points, 13 boards in the Spurs' 107-85 rout of the Bullets. Wes Unsell's club has dropped 6 in a row. Portland snapped a 4-game losing streak by whipping the Celtics at the Garden, 116-107. Clyde Drexler, the man as usual for the Blazers, he had 29. Karl Malone, 35 in Utah's win over the Sixers, and Atlanta dumped the Bucks at the Bradley Center. College hoops, Texas pulling the upset on number 3 Arkansas, 99-86 in Austin. William Benford threw down 22. Texas overcame a 10-point halftime deficit. The Hogs have already wrapped up the Southwest Conference title. East Tennessee State is in the NCAA playoffs. The Buccaneers won the Southern Conference tournament 101-82 over Appalachian State. Mr. Jennings leading the way with 29. Arizona officially joined the postseason dance as if they had to worry. The Cats won the Pac-10 title when Washington crushed UCLA 86-68. Deion Brown led the Huskies with 28. Ohio State clinched at least the tie in the Big Ten with a 65.
Passat. The Passat wagon comes with four-wheel disc brakes. It's got plenty of room for your family. And best of all, Fahrvergnügen, which means you might even forget you're driving a family car.
Are we there yet?
Well, maybe not. Fahrvergnügen, it's what makes a car, a Volkswagen. Nice logo, too.
Across the world, phones are ringing. Who's calling?
Hello, Mom.
People who have the AT&T Reach Out World plan. They're saving 20% on calls to friends and family in over 45 countries and areas. Even if you spend only $11 a month on international calls, you'll save on your calls to Mexico, Canada, across the Atlantic, or the Pacific. Dial 1-800-272-WORLD. Then go ahead and call. And the longer you talk, the more you'll save. The low $3 monthly fee gives you over 100 hours a week to save. You'll even get a state-to-state discount. Across America, people are signing up for the AT&T Reach Out World plan because with these savings and all the quality and service you expect from AT&T, it's our best value in international calling. Sign up now.
For some black Americans, the best opportunities may be in the military.
That's why I came in, to get a job.
Why are so many blacks enlisting? Many feel they have no other choice. A CNN special assignment begins Monday, 6 Eastern on CNN.
In today's world, it's hard enough to keep up, let alone keep informed. Now there's a way to do both. Every half hour, 24 hours a day, get the latest news, business, and sports. Continuously updated, clear, and concise. There when you need it. Headline News. Anytime, all the time.
Welcome back to Inside Business. Some business executives are not waiting for the government to tell them what they can or cannot export. Joining me now is Norman Heinerfeld, New York Chairman of Business Executives for National Security. Good evening. Good to have you here.
Good evening.
Tell me, is this another attempt by a business group to forestall government regulation?
Just the opposite. Benz believes that the government should act to control legally what is happening, but we feel that is not enough. There are too many holes in the dike, no matter what type of regulations the government should pass to control the situation of weapons proliferation. What we really believe is that the business community must voluntarily control itself.
Are there members of the high-tech or chemical industries, two affected industries, within your membership ranks?
Yes, Benz is a national organization of about 5,000 business and professional people, and included in our ranks are people in various aspects of the defense industries, the high-tech industries. And we are trying to build a consensus with not only our membership, but with the business community at large, that we must go into this terrible problem as citizens first and as business people second.
What is it exactly that you want business to do?
Well, Benz has drafted a set of principles on weapons proliferation, which we are now circulating throughout the business community. What we hope is that the business community will sign this set of principles, which says, in effect, that even if it is not illegal per se, but if we know that shipping a particular product to a particular country is of potential danger to the national security of the United States, we will not do so.
Are you a little concerned that a list of that sort, a list detailing which countries, which companies are problematic, could become a bit of a blacklist, maybe unfairly?
There's certainly that danger, but what we would anticipate that this list would be constantly updated and revised by not only the business community, but our government as well. We feel very strongly that the people who are engaged in a particular trade, the buyers and the sellers, know more about what could happen, for example, to dual-use technology than anyone sitting in Washington.
It's true, there's a lot of things out there that can be used for either military or civilian purposes, and there's a risk. You're asking business executives, though, essentially to put national security ahead of maybe their own job security and just walk away from profitable sales. How are you going to get them to do that?
We're going to have to certainly appeal to them logically. This is a very critical problem which will affect all of us in business and the public at large over the years ahead. But in addition, we feel that moral suasion will have to be exercised through other means. Number one is through the media. Number two, through large institutional investors. We hope to gain their support where they, as stockholders in companies throughout the land, will talk to the managements, to the boards of directors, and convince them.
And certainly the war in the Gulf brings the lesson home. I'd like to thank you for joining us on Inside Business, Norman Heinerfeld of Business Executives for National Security. That is this edition of Inside Business. Thank you for joining us. We hope to see you again next Sunday, and until then, have a good week.
Sauces in the supermarket. You know, DiGiorno Fresh.
DiGiorno Fresh.
Right, all delicious, all fresh, all right there in the refrigerated case. But like last night, we had tortellini with Alfredo, just like here, but at home. Say, I didn't know your last name was DiGiorno.
Neither did I.
For restaurant taste in the refrigerated case, DiGiorno Fresh pastas and sauces.
Recapping the top stories of the day, United Airlines says all of the passengers aboard the Boeing 737 that crashed in Colorado Springs boarded in Denver. 20 passengers and 5 crew members died. The pilot and 2 other Navy flyers died when a T-39 military plane crashed near the Glenview Naval Air Base. And Iraq's ambassador to the U.S. says his government has released 10 Allied POWs, including 6 Americans.
That's our news for tonight. We'll have more on the plane crashes and the Persian Gulf beginning tomorrow morning at 6:30.
Good night and have a good week. Sports Final is coming up next.
Gate Care, 838-2273.
This is CNN Headline News.
The New Yorker, if it were like any other magazine.
Their distance. The Iraqis also reveal the locations of mines and booby traps within Kuwait and in the Persian Gulf. The truce agreement provides for a symbolic release of Allied POWs as a gesture of good faith. Iraq's ambassador to the United Nations said Baghdad already has followed through with that promise. The ambassador says 10 coalition prisoners have been freed. He says they include 6 Americans, 1 a woman. There are 13 Allied POWs thought to be in Iraqi hands. Neither the Red Cross nor the U.S. has been able to confirm the ambassador's claim. This is the Iraqi port city of Basra, Iraq, before it became overrun with retreating Iraqi soldiers. Now there are signs that groups opposed to Saddam Hussein may be gaining a foothold there. Iranian radio reports severe clashes between pro- and anti-Hussein forces in Basra and 3 other Iraqi cities. Some reports are coming directly from refugees who are fleeing Basra.
Boys that are shooting everybody, they have guns, they shoot the pictures, they control, and the army control Basra border. And I believe there's some Iranians with them. About, they said 3,000, but I think more. And I came from the opposite side of the river. It's mass, it's upside down. You know, I can't explain.
Allied forces are now on the Kuwaiti island of Falaka, east of Kuwait City. Today they captured more than 1,400 Iraqi prisoners of war. U.S. military officials say Navy helicopters flew over the island for 2 days using loudspeakers to instruct the Iraqis on how to surrender. They say Allied forces haven't yet claimed complete control over the island, but a Kuwaiti flag has been raised. The resumption of television broadcasts apparently can be credited to Iraqi President Saddam Hussein. Pictures of Hussein meeting with his information minister and deputy chief of staff were broadcast Saturday night. Baghdad radio says Hussein met with officials today to discuss the task of rebuilding his war-ravaged country. Now that the fighting in the Gulf is apparently over, U.S. Secretary of State James Baker will travel to the Middle East to meet with Arab and Israeli leaders. Baker may discover how far the Gulf War will go in creating a new world order. Candy Crowley has that.
The strangest of bedfellows in an unlikely coalition of 28 nations, the U.S.-Syrian connection is given partial credit for what has not happened. a major outbreak in state-sponsored terrorism.
With respect to some of those groups that were targeting Western and particularly U.S. interests, Syria is serious when it says we are going to see what we can do about that, because we are interested in improving our relationship.
The Washington Post reports that U.S. intelligence picked up indications that Iran, a neutral in the Gulf War, also used its clout to urge that terrorist groups ignore Saddam Hussein. In exchange, the Iraqis, the Iranians, and everyone else got the full force of the U.S. military to at least defang the biggest threat in the region. But high as U.S. political currency is right now, there may be a limit to what it can buy.
We've done everybody in the region a great favor, including Israel. We've saved the Kuwaitis, the Saudis, and yes, we can and we will. But what I'm saying to you, John, is we can't go in there and impose a solution and expect to have that work.
In short, without the mutually despised and feared Saddam Hussein as a unifying force, it is unclear whether moderate Arab nations and Israel will be able to find common ground, regardless of their perceived debt to the U.S. For Israel, the major obstacle has been the insistence of the Palestine Liberation Organization that the PLO speak for Palestinians. The point may become moot in the wake of the PLO's strong support of Saddam Hussein and whispers in Syria and Saudi Arabia that Palestinians need new leadership. Secretary Baker says he goes to the Middle East this week with a gut feeling that both the Israelis and the Palestinians want to resolve things now. Such a breakthrough would pave the way for an overall Arab-Israeli peace. But in the coming months, the U.S. effort is the diplomatic equivalent of a journey through the Kuwaiti desert, full of landmines, where an inch of give and take one way or the other can make all the difference in the world. Candy Crowley, CNN at the State Department.
Egypt and the United States may be headed for a collision on the post-war Persian Gulf policy. Today, Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak said he wants no Western involvement in future security arrangements in the region. He insisted only Arab nations should protect the area. And Mubarak called on all nations in the region to lay down their nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons. French President Francois Mitterrand is calling for the establishment of a Palestinian state. In his first televised address since the Persian Gulf hostilities ended, Mitterrand said world leaders should convene a meeting on the Middle East. He acknowledged Israel's need for secure and recognized borders, but said Palestinians also deserve a homeland and national identity. Tempers flew at an Israeli government meeting today as cabinet members discussed
left back behind.
I don't want any of our people left over here.
The troops say they're pleased that their efforts have apparently led to a good start on peace talks, but they're still skeptical. Many have spent 7 months in the Gulf and have seen Saddam Hussein's handiwork up close.
I don't think that they should trust him as far as they could pick him up and throw him.
To be sure, the talks are not based simply on trust. Allied forces control a large chunk of southern Iraq. They've also devastated 40 out of 42 Iraqi military divisions. Those are big bargaining chips that the troops hope will end the game for good.
Basically, I don't want to come back here.
So far, there's no word on a firm timetable for sending the troops home. Jim Hill, CNN, Saudi Arabia.
Allied forces are now on the Kuwaiti island of Filaka, east of Kuwait City. Sunday, they captured more than 1,400 Iraqi prisoners of war. U.S. military officials say Navy helicopters flew over the island for 2 days using loudspeakers to instruct the Iraqis on how to surrender. They say Allied forces haven't yet claimed complete control over the island, but a Kuwaiti flag has been raised. The United Nations economic embargo against Iraq is being loosened a bit. The UN Security Council agreed Sunday night to allow shipments of such items as baby food and water cleansers. The United States has proven its military might in the Middle East, but won't try to force a peace plan on the region. That message from U.S. Secretary of State James Baker, scheduled to leave Wednesday for a post-war tour of the Middle East and the Soviet Union. The Soviets want an international conference on the Arab-Israeli question and other regional issues, but Washington is approaching that idea cautiously.
The position of the United States on an international conference is that it might be useful at an appropriate time, provided it's properly structured. And we want to see what the views and ideas of all of our coalition partners are, including France, including the Arab countries, and including Israel.
Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak says Middle Eastern nations need to stop thinking about settling old scores. He called on all nations in the region to lay down their nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons. French President Francois Mitterrand says the United Nations should take on the task of ensuring stability in the Middle East. In a televised address Sunday, Mitterrand said the UN Security Council should meet to discuss arms control and post-war security. And he said, just as the Israelis have a homeland, so should the Palestinians. Iraq's for again and against Saddam Hussein are squaring off in the southern Iraqi city of Basra. A Saudi journalist tells CNN Basra's local government has lost control and there is heavy fighting between civilians and troops loyal to Hussein. In addition, the opposition has freed people from prison and refugees are fleeing the city in droves. Basra, Iraq's second largest city, was heavily bombed by coalition forces during Operation Desert Storm. The resumption of television broadcasts apparently can be credited to Iraqi President Saddam Hussein. Pictures of Hussein meeting with his information minister and deputy chief of staff were broadcast Saturday night. Baghdad radio says Hussein met with officials Sunday to discuss the task of rebuilding his war-ravaged country. The Allied bombing is stopped. Now the biggest threat to Iraq comes not from the air, but from the water. What little water there is. Christiane Amanpour explains.
Now bound for Jordan. 6 U.S. nationals, 3 Britons, and an Italian were fed cheeseburgers, soft drinks, and chocolates before heading across the desert in a convoy of 3 cars. One of the freed Americans is a woman, Army Specialist Melissa Raspin-Neely of Grand Rapids, Michigan. She was the only woman listed by the coalition as missing in action. There's no comment from the top leadership of Iraq that unrest within the country reportedly is intensifying. For the first time since the Gulf War ended, Iraqi television on Sunday showed pictures of President Saddam Hussein meeting with aides. But Iran's official news agency says elite government forces are using tanks and heavy weapons in Basra to fight rebels opposing the Hussein regime. There is a report President Hussein's eldest son has been killed. There is no independent confirmation of any of this information. U.S. investigators are in Colorado Springs, Colorado, probing the wreckage of a United Airlines jet, the Boeing 7...
were buried in a mass grave during the 7-month Iraqi occupation. Some of the victims reportedly tortured. An anti-Saddam Hussein group says it now controls the southern Iraqi city of Basra. A spokesman for the Tehran-based group says several Basra officials, including the mayor and the governor general, have been killed in the battle, while others have surrendered and joined the rebel group. Basra heavily bombed by the Allies and during the 8-year Iran-Iraq war. A Saudi journalist who visited Basra yesterday told CNN he saw demonstrations against Saddam Hussein. He also reports opposition groups and government troops have been clashing in what appears to be a state of lawlessness. The Crown Prince of Kuwait returned to his newly liberated homeland today. Sheikh Saeed kissed the ground as he stepped from an American transport plane in Kuwait City. The Kuwaiti Emir last week appointed the Sheikh as martial law administrator to oversee a return to normalcy for Kuwait. Sheikh Saeed is the first senior member of Kuwait's ruling family to return following the liberation. A Kuwaiti official says the Emir is expected to return to Kuwait in a few days' time. Well, throughout the Persian Gulf War, Lieutenant General Thomas Kelly has been a visible part of the Pentagon's many military briefings. Jeff Levine has a look at the man behind the podium.
When Lieutenant General Thomas Kelly marches into the Pentagon briefing room, the news media come to attention.
The number that I can come up with for you is 1 Iraqi army destroyed.
Kelly has taken the lead role in describing the Gulf War effort to the Pentagon press corps. And during the 6 weeks of the conflict, Kelly, a soldier for 34 years, has shown that he can take the heat while keeping his cool.
Could something flare up as far as you can tell?
Did you ever see a mouse sitting outside a cat sitting outside a mouse hole? Our troops are vigilant.
The plain-talking general has earned a reputation as the briefer who shoots straight.
None of what I do is contrived. I don't go in there saying, here's how I'm going to handle that. Honest to God, I don't. I'm not sure I'm smart enough to do that.
The Pentagon briefing room could have become a battleground between the news media and U.S. military officials. But General Kelly, a former tank commander, diffused many reporters' questions. One of his weapons, a keen sense of humor.
I didn't take any heat during the Vietnam War. A lot of VC took a lot of heat during the Vietnam War.
Reporters in the Gulf have complained bitterly that the Pentagon's insistence on media pools has limited their access to the battlefield. But the dean of the Pentagon press corps says Kelly has kept the media well informed stateside.
I've heard and seen other people who didn't do as well, people who weren't comfortable. I think that reporters in the country are lucky to have a man like this.
One of Kelly's strengths as a briefer is that he's plugged into the command loop as Director of Operations for the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
He understands that you can't go up there and speak defense-ese, as a lot of people around this building do. He's pretty good about speaking English.
But there's been some sniping at Kelly's terminology to describe the war. For instance, attrit, Pentagon jargon for killing.
He's being attrited while he's doing all this waiting. I've gotten all kinds of letters that say attrit is a good and valid word. It's in the Oxford English Dictionary, it's in the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, and it means to wear down.
One of Kelly's favorite words is honesty.
My mother told me once that you should never sell the American people short, that they're a lot smarter than anybody gives them credit for, and they're going to...
Jeff Levine, CNN, at the Pentagon.
In other news, fire raced through a nursing home in Colorado Springs, Colorado earlier this morning. At least 9 people died, all residents of the home. Another 15 people were injured. Fire officials say the blaze apparently started in a room where smoking is allowed. They say about 6 hours after the fire started, it was under control, but firefighters were still trying to put out some hot spots. Officials say smoke hampered the rescue efforts.
We tried to get into one wing, but there was so much smoke we couldn't get into.
Baghdad, with Iraqi government sensors nearby to monitor what she says. Christiane?
Bobby, the first former Allied prisoners of war are now headed out of this country. They left in a convoy of Red Cross vehicles about 5 hours ago, and they should shortly be reaching the Jordanian border, where they will then be handed over to their respective ambassadors, into the care of their respective ambassadors. Today, CNN's Peter Arnett saw them as they left.
The release came less than 24 hours after an Allied request that Iraq make a symbolic gesture of goodwill by freeing some prisoners of war. The 10 were turned over to representatives of the International Committee of the Red Cross mid-morning in Baghdad at a downtown hotel.
Our people are now talking to them, seeing that they are well. We have a medical doctor who is checking them.
Snacks and drinks were waiting for the released prisoners when they arrived. The released POWs did agree to allow the International Press Corps to take photographs, but declined to answer questions about their captivity. The American woman captive, Melissa Rathbone-Naley, told me in a conversation in the hallway that she felt fine. She smiled when a Red Cross official told her she was on the cover of a French magazine and famous. She answered, "Maybe I shouldn't go back home," and grinned. The Red Cross had been denied permission to visit the prisoners during their captivity. An official gave his assessment of their health after meeting with them.
I think they're all for a non-medical in rather good shape. Our medical doctor has talked with them, has checked them, and it's up to him, and more particularly to, of course, the authorities of their respective countries to see that first, and then we will leave it to them and to the concerned former prisoners of war to explain themselves.
Red Cross officials said they handed mail to the group from friends and loved ones prior to their departure.
Have a safe trip.
Thank you very much.
C'est bon, huh?
The journey to the Jordan border was expected to take about 8 hours, putting their arrival at around mid-evening local time. Most of the prisoners had weeks earlier been paraded in front of Iraqi TV cameras. They were all obviously happy to be heading home. Few other Allied prisoners are known for certain to be in Iraqi hands. Under the ceasefire agreement, all prisoners from both sides will be released relatively soon. Peter Arnett, CNN, Baghdad.
In fact, we hear from Red Cross and Iraqi officials that the remaining Allied prisoners of war should be released within the next few days. That's what we've been told. But we've also been told that there are some 12 Allied pilots still in captivity and an unspecified number of ground forces. That's what we've been told. I'm Christiane Amanpour, CNN, reporting live from Baghdad.
U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Thomas Pickering is in Washington speaking to a convention of the Veterans of Foreign Wars that gave him an award. We expect he also will discuss that Gulf War.
We must stand up to brutal aggressors like Saddam Hussein. It is in times like these that our servicemen and women, past and present, become the strong right arm of American foreign policy. They also became the strong right arm of an international effort to use the collective security provisions of the United Nations Charter to stop aggression in its tracks. The Veterans of Foreign Wars' active support for the troops in the Persian Gulf is of vital importance to the success of Operation Desert Storm. It is also a vital link in the support for the diplomatic processes which we are vigorously pursuing. I also want to congratulate the Veterans of Foreign Wars on its steadfast commitment to expand the rights and benefits for Americans veterans, their families, and their dependents. This work will be of major importance when our troops return home from the Persian Gulf, a return which I know will begin very soon. By midnight last Thursday, Iraqi forces had been forced out of Kuwait, their army defeated and in tatters, their military machine broken. By midnight on Saturday, the United Nations passed its 13th resolution on the crisis, setting forth the terms which Iraq must accept for a definitive end to the hostilities. After 210 days, Kuwait was a free, sovereign nation again. Men and women like yourselves of the United States Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard, and the forces of 28 other countries cooperated in a 42-day air and 100-hour ground assault, the most concentrated and intense military operation since the Second World War. When the battle ended, all but a few of Saddam's 40-plus divisions in the Kuwait theater lay destroyed or completely disabled. As President Bush said last Thursday night, this singular triumph represents many victories combined for Kuwait, for the coalition partners, for the more than 50 countries providing economic, humanitarian, and other non-military aid, for the United Nations, and for the rule of law, and in a word, for all humankind. The sheer scale of military victory was matched by the scale of the international military, political, and diplomatic cooperation which Iraqi aggression provoked and which made its defeat inevitable. We prevailed for two reasons. Because the United Nations Security Council responded with a swift clarity and an unwavering firmness to Iraq's brutality, its threats, falsehoods, deceit, and duplicity. It gave voice to the world's feeling of outrage. We also prevailed because when the United Nations raised its arm and challenged Saddam Hussein, this country's servicemen and women, and those of many others, gave that arm a mighty, swift sword. Before I turn to the United Nations role, let me comment about the enormous military effort. As you all know, our soldiers, sailors, and airmen carried out a great part of the combat assignments. Yet the campaign to liberate Kuwait was in the fullest sense a collaboration of many countries. For example, the Saudis provided extraordinary support to our forces. In company with the Kuwaitis and the other Arab forces and the United States Marines, they played a role in liberating Kuwait City. Similarly, those World War II veterans here this morning who saw General Schwarzkopf's presentations last week would, like me, have been reminded of some potent and storied collaborations from that war with Britain and with France. As impressive as was the military collaboration, the unity and resolve achieved by and through the United Nations was even more remarkable. From a diplomatic and political perspective, it was historical. Unfortunately, over nearly half a century of its existence, the United Nations Security Council has been marked more often by divisions than by agreement. The story this time could not have been more different. The Council convened within minutes of Iraq's invasion. Within just a few hours, it reached a consensus and demanded Iraq's immediate and unconditional withdrawal. 4.5 days later, it passed the most sweeping and strictest United Nations sanctions regime ever imposed. Over the course of the next 4 months, It systematically tightened the noose of isolation on the Iraqi regime, nullifying its annexation of Kuwait, creating ways to enforce its sanctions against both ships and aircraft, authorizing for the first time on a general basis the use of maritime forces to search and detain shipping, invoking liability for damage to property, setting forth clearly the responsibilities of Iraq's leaders for violations of the Geneva Conventions, and ultimately authorizing the use of force under the UN Charter to end the Iraqi aggression and occupation of Kuwait. Prior to Iraq's invasion, the administration had been heavily preoccupied with the dramatic political changes in Europe. The new relationship emerging between ourselves and the Soviet Union was setting a basis for a new era of respect for international law, defended by a commitment to collective security. Iraq's brazen invasion of Kuwait put all of that to the test. Like the League of Nations before it, the United Nations' capacity to be an instrument for peace and justice was seriously at risk. Unlike the League's response to the invasion of Ethiopia in 1936, the United Nations in 1990 passed that test. Several factors account for the difference, and let me just tick off a few. President Bush's decision to regard Iraq's invasion as a direct, potentially mortal challenge to the new era at the very moment of its birth. A shift in Soviet behavior toward a greater willingness to condemn acts of aggression, even when perpetrated by a longtime friend and client such as Iraq. The cohesion which the 5 permanent members of the Security Council had already achieved over nearly 3 years of increasingly cooperative work on the settlement of regional conflicts. The skillful personal diplomacy of our President and Secretary of State provided the consensus among heads of state and foreign ministers which permitted continuing resolute Security Council action, the courageous and prominent role played by the countries of the Gulf, beginning with Kuwait itself, and finally, I should in frankness add that we had a very inept opponent. At every turn of this crisis, Saddam's actions have been so blatant, so defiant, and his miscalculations of governmental and public opinion so monumental that he has left no basis for justifying anything but the strictest and sternest possible actions against him. In fact, this last point reminds me of a story now making the rounds in New York. A lawyer, a doctor, and Saddam Hussein were asked if they would sell their brains for future use and put a price tag on them. The lawyer began by claiming $100,000, saying, "My brain has been the source of brilliant exploits in criminal jurisprudence." The doctor upped the ante by saying $200,000. "My brain has been the source of brilliant surgical achievements." Saddam Hussein said, "I want $1 million. My brain has never been used." These factors I have just mentioned combined in the Security Council to bring to life an unbeatable partnership, a partnership without which there can be no real enduring basis for peace and prosperity in this world. It is a partnership between the rule of law and the responsible application of force. It is, to put it bluntly, the right to say no. The United Nations and the troops of Desert Storm have defended that right. These great challenges in the United Nations must be accompanied by another American foreign policy goal for the UN itself: continuing reform. Reform has indeed begun, and in recognition of that fact, we have gone to the Congress over the last 2 years to secure full funding for the organization. Its role in the Persian Gulf has helped to persuade the Congress, but it is hard to count on an organization to function effectively in our own foreign policy interests when we are still, as Secretary Baker has said, the biggest deadbeats at the UN. Now that the coalition has won the war, It must be strong enough and wise enough to win the peace. It must be a peace worthy of the sacrifice of lives and treasure which we and others have already paid. We have emphasized that the United Nations has a role to play in assuring a strong and just peace. That task has two parts: the design and implementation of a framework to disengage the military forces, a short-term goal, and the design and creation of a durable framework and fabric for peace in the region, a long-term goal. Let me just spend a few minutes on each. Once Iraq carries out the coalition's terms for ending the hostilities, incorporated in Resolution 686 of the Security Council passed on Saturday night, there will be a number of tasks to which the United Nations might contribute. But first, we expect Iran rapidly to return all prisoners of war and all hostages and other prisoners which it holds from Kuwait and from other countries. We expect it to accept its responsibility for reparations and compensation, and to nullify its illegal annexation of Kuwait, and to comply fully with all of the 13 United Nations resolutions passed by the Security Council. And while we are in the process of exploring the possible roles for the United Nations, let me draw a few examples and illustrations from what that organization has been able to do in the past. Some of these may be appropriate to the present set of circumstances, and this trip of the Secretary of State to the region in the next few days will provide an opportunity to explore some of these further. The Secretary General of the UN is himself engaged also in looking into these issues. There will be requirements for closely monitoring Iraqi compliance with any ceasefire. There is always a need to verify compliance with ceasefire lines when they are permanently established. There must be supervision of all repatriation, return of remains, and return of Kuwaiti assets and property. Some of these roles will be played by the International Committee of the Red Cross. Others could be played by an international organization such as the UN. Further stages of disengagement often tend to lead to the need for military observers and specialists who can form a peacekeeping force. They are used to establish and patrol security zones along the borders of the states to be protected, such as Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. In the aftermath of any conflict, there are always problems to be resolved, particularly if both sides wish to do so. Kuwait has before, during, and after the conflict signaled its strong desire to see the issues which involve Iraqi claims against it cleared up by negotiation. Kuwait has always indicated a willingness to deal with these problems through negotiation. The United Nations can provide help and assistance in promoting such a settlement, if that is the desire of the parties to the dispute. Both Kuwait and the people of Iraq face serious and important needs for humanitarian assistance. The United Nations is working to coordinate and provide relief and rehabilitation assistance in the immediate aftermath of the war in Kuwait. Under the existing resolutions, all trade with Iraq has ceased. However, the United Nations provided for a blanket exception for bona fide medical assistance in keeping with the views that the President has recently expressed on this subject. The United Nations will be sending missions to the area to look at the humanitarian needs, and will be acting on the basis of recently received results from earlier such missions. Beyond that, the UN could obviously play an important role in aiding in the reconstruction of Kuwait. With respect to the case of Iraq, this would be problematic, so long as Saddam is in charge, his leadership remains in power, and a definitive end to hostilities has not been consolidated. Once disengagement is achieved, an even more challenging set of tasks face the countries of the region and those who are cooperating with them. Together, we must carry out the provisions of Resolution 678 for the restoration of peace and security. This will involve steps to deal with such matters as Iraq's liability for atrocities and other acts in violation of the Geneva Convention, Iraq's liability to provide for compensation for the damages as a result of its aggression, invasion, and occupation, and the future of sanctions against Iraq. In all of these areas, the UN resolutions create requirements which will survive Iraq's retreat from Kuwait, and will have to be addressed over the next days and weeks. In recent congressional testimony, Secretary Baker enumerated 4 elements which we regard as essential to the creation of a durable and just peace in the region. First, greater security for the Persian Gulf. This would include the question of post-war security arrangements among the countries in the Gulf themselves, the possible role in these arrangements of forces from local and regional states, and appropriate force and weapon levels necessary to establish and enhance stability, a role for the international community in reinforcing deterrence, the principles which might guide local security arrangements, the requirement for full respect for territorial integrity, peaceful settlement of disputes, and the deterrence of aggression. Second, the Secretary mentioned the strengthening of an arms control regime within the region. We must examine how we can work to constrain Iraq's ability to reconstruct its war-making capacity, including, in particular, weapons of mass destruction and advanced delivery vehicles, and ensure that Iraq also, in the process, does not become the prey to the ambitions of others. We are committed to avoiding its dismantling and its dismemberment. How can we foster broader regional restraint in the acquisition and use of conventional weapons and weapons of mass destruction? Confidence-building measures could be designed and implemented to lessen the likelihood of conflict. This might include exchanges of military observers, looking at the maneuvers on both sides and finding ways to avoid misperceptions of intent on each side. What actions outside the region would reinforce those taken inside? Here we will have to review our own arrangements, blocking the sales of precursor chemicals for gas weapons and dual-use technology. A quick completion of the Chemical Weapons Treaty would be enormously important. States should be taking a clear look at their arms transfer policies. Third, economic reconstruction and recovery. Iraq's invasion triggered 7 months of devastation in the region. Kuwait is in ruins. There are serious disruptions in employment, trade, and financial flows. War has also brought damage of an economic character throughout the Gulf and well beyond. It is now urgent not only to restore the economic vitality of the region, but to steer it towards a path of wider and deeper prosperity so that economic tensions may be eliminated as a potential source of conflict. And finally, fourth, resuming the search for a just peace and a real reconciliation between Israel and the Arab states. No lasting solution to the security problems of the region is possible in the absence of a settlement of the Arab-Israeli problem. During the course of this crisis, the context of that peace process has changed considerably. In some cases, the change is for the better. But as in everything in the Middle East, in some cases it may not be. Even a casual review of the points I have just made about the future reveals how essential progress is on this one front to assuring stability and progress throughout the region. So with the war over, the President has made clear we are determined to press on in our search for peace in the Middle East. The issues are long familiar to all of us. How to start reconciliation between Israelis and Palestinians? What concrete actions can and should be taken on each side? How can the Arab states facilitate that process as well as push forward their own relations and negotiations with Israel? How can regional arms control discussions assist in this larger process? What methods can we use to make a start across the negotiating table? When President Bush decided last August to challenge Saddam within the arena of the United Nations, it was an historic moment, pregnant with implications and opportunity for the United Nations and the United States equally. And the successful partnership between the Security Council and the military forces of Desert Storm in recent weeks fulfilled the earlier hopes born in August. Now that deeds of peace and reconstruction are replacing those of war, it is time to offer a few observations regarding a future for what has clearly become the most constructive relationship between the UN and the U.S. in history. The first lesson, and it is really a dividend, is about war prevention. I do not believe it is too optimistic to say that Saddam's unhappy fate has already become an object lesson for some. As long as the Security Council can unite, and this is always a big if, with many special factors at play at any time, its warnings to errant dictators now have a far better chance of getting the attention of those dictators. This prize was clearly purchased for all of us with the lives of American and coalition soldiers, but most certainly we should now take steps not to waste it. One of those steps is to make clear to the current Secretary General of the UN and to his successor next year that we will support a firm approach to finding ways to prevent conflict. We will stay in close touch with him and share our thoughts and information in order to accomplish this task. Another step is to make known our willingness to consider the fact that UN peacekeeping forces could well assist along threatened borders as an earnest of our seriousness about protecting the principle of territorial integrity of states. With Iraq's defeat lodged in the collective memory of the world community, I believe that effective peacekeeping of this character could save lives. A second lesson about this new phenomenon, a United Nations enforcement action, is very important. As many in this audience understand well, coalition warfare is a difficult proposition when forces from many countries with different operating procedures, different military cultures, different equipment, and different languages must unite to face a common foe. The task of carrying out even superficial integration without loss of command and control effectiveness is tough. Indeed, Desert Storm's success owes much to the centrality of our role in the command area and in the large number of our troops engaged. But we would be mistaken to expect that the future will always be a faithful replica of the past. First of all, it is unfair to expect our soldiers to serve indefinitely as world policemen. This is true even if they get authority from the UN to do so. Second, they may not be permitted to do so. Future Security Council use of force authorization might well carry more fine print on how to apply and command the force. And third, the scale of enforcement action, should they occur, is likely, in my view, to be far more modest. In view of these considerations, we should now begin to look over the ground of possible UN enforcement arrangements as set forth in the Charter and never implemented, in order to make sure that the next time we must act, it is successful as this time. My last observation is that senior political as well as diplomatic and military levels over the past months, we have consulted far more broadly and extended the circle of participation far more widely than was customary when faced with Cold War challenges. The reason, as President Bush has repeatedly emphasized, is that this is the first crisis of the post-Cold War era, and it cuts across many of the old East-West and North-South ideological boundaries. This is true because what is at stake is the character of this new era, in which all of us want to work and indeed in which all of us will have to live. From my vantage at the UN, I can assure you that for a great many of these countries, such close consultations with our country is a very new experience. We were talking to them deadly seriously, and they appreciated it. And not only did they respond in kind, but we gained friends and support as a consequence. This is also a dividend we can invest in and add to as we build the new world order the President has spoken so eloquently about. In closing, I want to approach the theme of the international cooperation and community from a slightly different angle. Underlying all of the factors which lead to the success of the world's challenge of Saddam, there was an unbeatable partnership. This is a partnership without which there can be no enduring basis for peace and prosperity in the world. What I am speaking about is the partnership between the rule of law, and the responsible application of force. It is, as one American told a reporter not many months ago, that which gives us the right to say no to aggressors and to outlaws. Ladies and gentlemen, we are thankful to the United Nations and to the troops of Desert Storm for defending that right. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you very much.
And so Ambassador Pickering has spoken to the VFW. We should tell you that Colin Powell, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, will speak to the same group in Washington at the top of the hour, and CNN plans to carry his remarks live. The ambassador was concerned with two designs here. The short-range design, he said, for the disengagement and the securing of peace on the battlefront, and the long-range design, which he described as one finally reaching into the very issues of the Palestinians and the Israelis and beyond, peace and security in the Middle East. He suggested that perhaps the UN, after half a century of disillusionment and bickering, has found its voice and found its strong right arm, which he concedes thus far has been mainly the United States. Also, in terms of the short range, the Pentagon has announced now that it plans to release some 300 prisoners of war from the other side, that is, men held by the coalition forces, in response to the freedom of the 10 prisoners of war who were released in Baghdad today and now are on their way to Amman, Jordan, and home. And we'll continue after this word from your local cable station.
World Day continues, followed by Day Watch, next on CNN.
The whole town's talking about the Webb boys, the Webb boys, the Webb boys. The whole town's talking about the Webb boys, and the Webb family promises why. The whole town's talking about the trade-ins, the surf.
Good day, Reed. The celebrations are continuing here upon the return of the Crown Prince. He landed just a few hours ago at the Kuwait International Airport. He was greeted there by a very large crowd. He kissed the ground. He walked out of his Saudi Air Force jet and kissed the ground, and he said he was happy to be back home with his beloved country and to his beloved brothers and sisters. He said that Kuwait is now a liberated country again, and that Saddam has failed. The Crown Prince has arrived, and probably the Emir is not much farther. They're going to have some things to deal with when they get here. That is, rebuilding this country and the problems they have right now. No water, no electricity. In the streets of downtown Kuwait City today, you can see bread lines. When the Iraqis left, they took all of the flour with them, and people are lining up in front of trucks that are distributing food that has been trucked in from Saudi Arabia. And tempers have been running a little high this afternoon as the people line up for what they took for granted just a few months ago. So there are bread lines for any food distribution that is occurring right now in Kuwait City. Earlier today, the Kuwaiti resistance announced that it was supporting the government and they were going to turn in their weapons to authorities. As the Iraqis were leaving, they captured, they say, about 8,000 prisoners of war. They said they went through the hospitals and other areas and made sure that those people didn't leave. Some other people simply turned themselves in. The resistance says it is going to disband. They haven't officially done that, though. They say they're preparing to do that. They say the resistance members came from all walks of life. They say that doctors, lawyers, businessmen, and even some who were in the military did not flee or were not captured and simply joined the resistance. But they say they are going to support the government now.
We are going to fight to have democracy, but we are going to fight it in a kind peacefully, not with the guns. So I think we are clear about that. We are still believe in the democracy in this country. As I have mentioned before, that we have been taking a very great lesson from those Iraqi people, and we're still going to have, inshallah, the democracy in our country.
There are thousands of people in the street again tonight here in Kuwait City. The crowds are much larger than they have been on any other day. The word that the Crown Prince has returned here has ignited the people to come out of their homes and out of the darkness into the streets. Most people here do not have electricity unless they own a generator, so simply sitting at home by candlelight or going out into the streets to celebrate. And yes, there is the gunfire that we hear constantly since the Iraqis have departed. So they are using up all of the ammunition. Some People thought that it was quite possible that the Iraqis may have left the weapons behind, knowing that people would pick them up and use them. They are having a serious problem with the number of people who have been wounded and even killed by this celebratory gunfire, shooting up in the air. Even young children, 8- and 9-year-olds, have been reported killed by the gunfire as it comes back down to earth. I'm Tom Intier, CNN, reporting live from Kuwait City.
Let's check what's happening on the financial markets now at this hour. Jan Hopkins at the New York Stock Exchange. Good morning, Jan.
Hi, Bobby. Here on Wall Street, stock prices are slightly higher, adding to Friday's gains. The market is not up as much as it was earlier in the session. Right now, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is up about 1 2/3 points, or rather 1 3/4 points, at 29.11 2/3. Volume is heavy, 51 million shares changing hands. And the advancing issues are outpacing declining issues by a 3-2 margin. The broader and the secondary markets are mixed at this hour. France's group Schneider is launching a hostile takeover of Square D. $78 a share bid was initially a friendly one, but Square D rejected it. The stock, though, is up 1/4 point at 76 3/4. Oil prices higher again today after climbing $1.47 a barrel last week. In New York trading, the U.S. benchmark crude up 57 cents at $19.95 a barrel. An explosion at a Citgo refinery in Louisiana helping to boost prices today. The U.S. dollar is mixed this morning. Right now it is up almost a yen against the Japanese currency, but it's down 1/4 of a pfennig against the German mark. It's up a fraction of a cent against the British pound. That's the latest from Wall Street. I'm Jan Hopkins reporting live from the New York Stock Exchange.
And World Day will continue in a moment.
Imagine learning to cook elegant Italian cuisine where it all began, at Lorenzo de Medici's famous Villa Table cooking school in Chianti. Enter Bay's Villa Table recipe contest, and Bay's English muffins may fly you to Italy on Alitalia. Just send us your original recipe using Bay's English muffins. And if you win, the week-long cooking school and trip for 2 is yours. Look for specially marked packages in your grocer's dairy case. Bay's.
You know, when you take a Carnival cruise, all your shipboard fun is included in the price. All your nighttime entertainment's included. All your food's included, too. Plus fantastic tropical ports of call. And it costs a lot less than you think. So take a 3, 4, or 7-day fun ship vacation on Carnival, the most popular cruise line in the world.
To book your 3, 4, or 7-day Carnival cruise, visit any of the 1,000 Carlson Travel Network agencies or call 1-800-CARLSON.
Sure, I want my family to eat healthy. Doesn't everyone? But I can still cook foods we love. I just cook them smarter. And I trust Pam to help me do that.
Even healthy foods like chicken can be loaded with fat and calories cooked in butter, margarine, or oil. Look at all the fat and calories they add compared to Pam, the healthier choice.
That's why we're Pam people. When they eat healthy, I'm happy.
No stick Pam cooking spray. It's the healthier way to cook.
Showbiz Today is back, and on our next program, how the war in the Gulf has changed the face of TV news. Also, Oliver Stone on his new movie, The Doors. Showbiz Today returns 5:30 p.m. Eastern, 2:30 Pacific on CNN.
There are questions today about the future of Saddam Hussein. There are unconfirmed reports that fighting is underway in Basra, Iraq, between government forces and opponents of the Iraqi leader. An Iraqi opposition leader in Syria claims a provincial governor and the mayor of Basra have been killed. And Iran's official news agency says it believes that President Hussein's son has been killed. Western reporters have not been able to gain access to Basra to verify any of these claims. Norman Reese narrates this report.
Both Kuwait and the people of Iraq face serious and important needs for humanitarian assistance. The United Nations is working...
Turmoil inside Basra are being brought out by refugees fleeing south. Shiite Muslim fundamentalists are said to have destroyed public monuments to Saddam Hussein and released dissidents from prison. Some Iraqi soldiers are reported to have joined the revolt.
They shoot everybody, they fight everybody, everywhere.
So they're killing people on the road?
I saw some people that are dying in the street, and I saw some blood coming.
The people, they don't want President Saddam Hussein. They killed the police, and Arab Associate.
Some armed revolutionaries are also on the road, looking, they say, for more weapons and help from the Americans. They claim the opposition is in control of Basra, but their most immediate concern on this occasion was to avoid nearby pro-Saddam troops, some of them wearing the emblem of the Republican Guard. Many of the revolutionaries are supporters of Mohammed Bakr al-Hakim, a long-standing opponent of Saddam Hussein, who leads the Tehran-based Supreme Assembly of the Islamic Revolution in Iraq. A major Western concern is that the country could now literally split apart, the so-called Balkanization of Iraq. Iranian-backed Shiites, the biggest group, could try to establish an Islamic republic in the south where they dominate. The Kurds in the north have also suffered terrible oppression at Saddam's hands. An uprising there could leave the ruling Sunnis with a tiny portion of present-day Iraq and no outlet to the sea.
I think that the uprising or the revolution that we are witnessing these days is a reaction to Saddam Hussein's greatest folly. But I think once the Shiites will assert their point, I think that they'll try to gain greater political influence in Iraq's political life rather than go for a different state.
What is clear in a muddy scene for the moment is that loyalist troops are still in control of roads leading into Basra. An ITN crew trying to follow Iraqi tanks into the city were turned back by pro-Saddam soldiers manning fortified sand barriers. The city of Basra marked by columns of smoke several miles away.
Baghdad Radio, meantime, is portraying Saddam Hussein as being in complete control of his country. It says he met recently with his top aides to discuss the latest political situation.
Those CBS newsmen held by Iraq during the war say their captors terrorized them. Correspondent Bob Simon and 3 colleagues arrived in London yesterday. In an interview earlier today on CNN, they said they were left the military press pool in Saudi Arabia and were up on the Saudi-Kuwaiti border when Iraqi troops found them. At first, the Iraqis appeared to be friendly, but then that changed.
They stopped, started shouting, peace, peace, no war, peace, peace, no war. And I guess I was about 10 or 15 feet away from one of them. So I walked across and shook hands with him. And it seemed sort of okay. It didn't seem menacing at that moment. Until after he'd shaken hands with me, he didn't let go of my hand. And then I realized it had gone wrong. And one of the guys had moved around behind us. And we were then in the line of 3 Kalashnikovs. And so we got into the back of the Jeep, and that was the beginning of the 40 days and 40 nights.
The earlier interrogations when they beat us were infinitely more supportable, because after you've been beaten a couple of times, you realize that, hey, it's extremely unpleasant and it hurts like hell, but after a while it stops, and you can get through it. But when they terrorize you, when they accuse you of working for the Mossad, the emotions that come out of that do not stop. And they put a terror in your head that just doesn't go away. And after that interrogation, I welcomed the bombs that fell that night, because I figured that the status quo had become treacherous for me, that I could not survive the status quo, and that anything that would blast the status quo would give me, if I had a chance, God bless these bombs.
Simon says he feared being separated from the others because he is Jewish and was accused of being an Israeli spy. United Nations says it's ready to step up humanitarian aid to Iraq. The strict trade embargo against Baghdad is not being relaxed, but the Sanctions Committee will speed efforts, it says, to get much-needed medical, nutritional, and public health supplies into Iraq civilians. UN officials warn that inadequate food supplies and bomb damage in Iraq could lead to serious outbreaks of disease. Joining us next when we come back is John Roos, international editor of the Armed Forces Journal.
Hey, that's not us. We're down here. We're Daihatsu from Japan, and we're new in the neighborhood. So you haven't seen a lot of Daihatsus here. Not yet. But as word spreads about Daihatsu quality, we'll grow bigger, and we won't get a stiff neck from looking up at the neighbors.
With our Charade 3-door hatchback, Daihatsu quality starts from $63.97.
Freedom's the one.
Only one gum passes the test when you've got dental work, and that's Freedent. Freedent won't stick to your dental work, so you can be confident chewing it. And because it also moistens your mouth and freshens your breath, Freedent's in a class by itself.
Freedent's the one that took the stick out of gum, and Freedent moistens your mouth. Yeah, moistens your mouth and freshens your breath while you chew.
Non-stick Freedent moistens your mouth and freshens your breath.
Poor thing, you've got a real miserable cold, huh? Well, you could take Sudafed for your stuffy nose, plus chlortrimeton for your sneezing, plus, yep, there's more, plus regular Tylenol for your aches and pains, plus, why are you looking at me like that? Plus Benylin DM for your cough. You don't want to take all these? Well, you can relieve all those symptoms with multi-symptom Comtrex. It's that simple. Just take Comtrex and you'll feel better.
Comtrex, all alone, it does it all.
Ooh, I love the taste of Crab Delights from Lewis Kemp Crab Delights tonight. It's a seafood paradise.
So easy, so delicious.
Crab Delights tonight
from Lewis Kemp.
Great cake!
Maybe for you, but my hemorrhoids are killing me.
Try Citigen.
Still going. Nothing outlasts the Energizer. They keep going and going.
Now, for the first time ever, take home the cosmos. Break the shackles of space and time. Explore the universe. Search for life on other worlds. Penetrate the secrets of life on this world. Safeguard the Earth. Get Carl Sagan's Cosmos. All 13 thrilling adventures, priced at just $19.98 each. Now available at Walden Books.
Come aboard the spaceship of the imagination. Join me in Cosmos.
Joining us now in our Washington Bureau to discuss post-war Kuwait and the return of U.S. troops is John Roos. He is the international editor of the Armed Forces Journal. Good morning, John. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Bobby.
What is the knowledge that you have of when we can expect the return of U.S. troops at this point?
Well, as soon as the word is given to redeploy the troops, it looks like the 82nd Airborne Division out of Fort Bragg will get the nod to be the first unit home. And we would expect them home between a week and 2 weeks after that word is received. They'll be followed by the 101st Air Mobile out of Fort Campbell, in turn followed by the 24th out of Fort Stewart. The 24th will redeploy by ship.
Why is it planned that the activists come home before the reservists?
Well, that may create a little bit of consternation, but about 8 years ago, the Army made a conscious decision to put many of the support troops in the reserve structure. These are people like mortuary affairs, military police, prisoner of war units, civil affairs units, which there's a great need for in Kuwait. So these people are not in the active structure. There's no option if we're to help the Kuwaitis in their rebuilding effort.
All right, well, speaking of that now, how does the role of the U.S. military change from that of a fighting one to assisting Kuwait in its rebuilding?
Well, there'll have to be some kind of umbrella organization. It's usually referred to as a status of forces agreement. And this is a legal agreement that will be drawn up between our government and the Kuwaiti government, and it will specify in broad terms what the Kuwaitis can expect from us and what we in turn can expect from them. Under the status of forces, the primary thing the U.S. will be looking for is legal protection for the soldiers who are there, the soldiers who remain, in case they violate Kuwaiti laws.
The cleanup or restoration list is clearly monumental. What's on top of the list? Where will they start? What are the priorities?
Priorities have to concern, first off, the safety of the Kuwaitis and the safety of the forces, and that means clearing the minefields. There is also a problem that it hasn't received a lot of coverage yet, but there could be as many as 100,000 Iraqi dead beneath the sands of Kuwait. And the British have already begun some initial efforts in identifying the places where groups of bodies rest. And then that leads to the political problem of repatriating those bodies or finding a permanent resting place for them.
What about war criminals, John? First of all, are we likely to find, are the authorities over there likely to find them and prosecute them? Or what would happen to an Iraqi, for example, who was arrested by an MP?
Well, as far as the war criminals go, there are investigations going on right now. People are collecting information from the Kuwaitis and others who allegedly have first-hand knowledge of atrocities. There is an FBI team also on standby right now, augmented by military police reservists who are ready to go there to assist the active duty Criminal Investigation Division inspectors in that investigation.
What about now the massive number of POWs as well? How involved will the U.S. military be in their handling and interrogation?
We have the interrogators. We have both the intelligence interrogators and the military police interrogators who would get involved in that. I think, in all likelihood, we would like to see the Kuwaitis and the Saudis do as much of the interrogations as possible.
The civil affairs units that are over there, a lot of people are not aware of their existence, but they basically are responsible, right, for reassessing damage to public works.
Well, these are the people who would provide the initial infrastructure for the Kuwaiti government. The civil affairs units, and a source in the Pentagon told me just last week that there are thousands of them in country. This is another example of the type skill found in the reserves that's not found in the active structure. These are the people, though, that you can liken them to a city manager in this country. They would have the responsibility for reestablishing the electricity, the water, and just getting the governmental structure back in shape.
John Roos, International Editor of the Armed Forces Journal, thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Bobby.
We'll be back with more news right after this.
Take your average family trip, but take it in a not-so-average family car, the new Volkswagen Passat. The Passat wagon comes with four-wheel disc brakes. It's got plenty of room for your family, and best of all, Fahrvergnügen, which means you might even forget you're driving a family car.
Are we there yet?
Well, maybe not. Fahrvergnügen, it's what makes a car a Volkswagen. Nice logo, too.
How do I know which coffee to get?
Just look for Juan Valdez.
Right.
Buenos dias.
I just saw Juan Valdez.
Of course. He's on every can of Colombian coffee. When you see him, you know you're getting the richest coffee in the world.
Oh.
If you want 100% Colombian coffee, just look for Juan Valdez. You can't miss him.
The stress headache. Relentless. Tightening. Stretching. When the pain has you at the limit, take Anacin. Anacin. Or aspirin-free Anacin 3. Strong pain relief for today's stress headache.
Washington, the speech capital of the world. Ever wonder how they found time to write all those speeches? Lanier. With Lanier, a senator can dictate 6 speeches in the time it takes to write one. A congressman can dictate a speech on the way to making a speech. Fortunately, for everyone who has to listen to all that, Lanier can save us time, too, for things we enjoy. Ooh, I might make it to the White House.
Call Lanier, 1-800-241-1706.
For some black Americans, the best opportunities may be in the military.
That's why I came in.
Why are so many blacks enlisting? Many feel they have no other choice. A CNN special assignment begins tonight, 6 Eastern on CNN. In the Soviet Union, 2 more Baltic republics have declared their support for independence. In non-binding referenda yesterday, nearly 3/4 of the voters in Latvia and in Estonia voted to secede from the Soviet Union. These results echo the Lithuanian ballot of a month ago and represent a strong challenge to President Mikhail Gorbachev. He has declared those votes
were needed. I said that our men and women in the Gulf were your worthy successors. Today, let me ask you, was I right? Last August at that convention, I also told you that I had heard a statement from the Iraqi foreign minister earlier that day warning us that we'd better be careful. He said that our operations in Grenada and Panama were a vacation compared to what we might be confronting in the Middle East. He warned us about rivers of blood and how the American Army and its coalition friends would be defeated should war come. And some of you may remember that I responded by saying,
Don't try to scare us or threaten us. It won't work. It never has. Americans can't be scared, especially not by the likes of Mr. Saddam Hussein. Let me ask you again, was that right? I know that VFW members and all Americans feel the same fierce pride I feel in the professionalism and courage of the men and women of our armed forces now wrapping up the war in the Gulf. It's not arrogance, it's not gloating, it's just a feeling you get when you've done something just, when you've done something right, when you've joined the rest of the free world in defeating tyranny and you've achieved a victory in doing it. And America once again led the way in this historic effort. The mail that has poured into my office every day since the war began shows me one reason why America led the way and why that way led to victory. A young girl from the Mississippi School for the Blind wrote me a letter. The letter was in Braille. She told me that she sees the yellow ribbon on the flagpole outside her window. She told me that she sees it stand up to strong winds and driving rain, that she sees it hold its place among the rough elements because it symbolizes our brave men and women in the Gulf, one of whom is the young girl's teacher, a reservist who answered the call to arms. The mind of this 14-year-old American is so powerful that it overcomes her blindness, overcomes it to give her a clarity of vision that most of us will never have. In the past few weeks, you could drive around any part of this great country and see the yellow ribbons on light posts, on doorways, on car antennas, and American flags flying from garages, from rooftops, in stadiums, in front yards and backyards. The steady and resolute support of America for her men and women in the Gulf was a primary reason for our overwhelming success. President Bush began gathering that support early in the crisis. He made sure that the American people understood what the stakes were in this crisis. He made sure they understood what the risks were and why it was necessary for us to pursue the course we were on. He gave us clear, unmistakable policy direction. He deployed military forces to defend our friends, to protect our interest, and to ensure, eventually, a peaceful future. And he also knew that in war, there is no substitute for victory. Having been at war himself and understanding the controversies surrounding every war and every crisis since World War II, he knew that once a president decides to send American men and women into harm's way, then he must trust to his military leaders the task of leading those men and those women to victory. We're also very fortunate that over the last decade, our national leaders made sure that our armed forces would carry to any future war the very best equipment that American industry could provide. The solid support of the VFW helped make that happen. We also made sure that our GIs received the very best training that creative minds could devise. Tough, hard, fast-paced, and demanding. This training made sure that when real battles took place, they would be won, and they would be won with minimum casualties. What are the results of this superb equipment and training? In Operation Desert Storm, for example, we lost not a single aircraft in air-to-air combat. We destroyed over 3,300 Iraqi tanks and lost only a handful of our own. We dropped bombs that took down entire bridge spans in a single stroke. Bridge spans that in previous wars had taken thousands of bombs to destroy. Such a performance is a result of the best equipment, the best training, the best readiness, and above all, the very best American troops and the very finest Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard in the world. The thunder and lightning of Desert Storm came from another place as well. Training, equipment, readiness, people, all of these things only combine to produce victory under leaders who understand how to use them. General Norm Schwarzkopf has laid to rest the ghost of Vietnam. Norm is the kind of general President Lincoln searched for through most of the Civil War. President Bush was fortunate to have Stormin' Norman in charge from the very beginning of the crisis. But General Schwarzkopf did not do it alone. Lieutenant General Chuck Horner, his Air Force commander and the man who orchestrated the air campaign, was a key warrior in Operation Desert Storm. His brilliant and decisive use of air power to shape the battlefield will be studied for many, many years to come. At the head of the Army Ground Forces was Lieutenant General John Yosak. John is also the commander of the United States Third Army, the same army that General George Patton hurled against Hitler's legions in France in 44 and 45. I think old George would be pretty proud of what he saw Army forces doing going across the deserts of Iraq if he could look down and see it. Let me tell you a little bit about John Yosak. He's a War College classmate of mine, as is General Chuck Horner, but 8 days ago, General Yosak had pneumonia and he needed emergency surgery. On the past Sunday before yesterday, he was evacuated to Germany. He was operated on the next day. On Wednesday, I went looking for him. He was back in Saudi Arabia. And with surgical stitches in his side, he controlled the 2 Army corps that slashed into Iraq and encircled and destroyed the Iraqi army before they knew it hit them. That's General Yosak. And in command of the Marines and soldiers who charged right into Kuwait was Lieutenant General Walt Boomer. General Boomer's own Marines, standing in a just liberated Kuwait City, summed it up best. They said that they had attacked 11 Iraqi divisions with 2 Marine divisions, so the odds were just about right. And that sea controlling an historic maritime operation and at the same time supporting land operations was Vice Admiral Stan Arthur, overseeing more than 120 warships, the largest and most powerful naval armada since World War II. Admiral Arthur conducted a series of feints that tied up a large number of Iraqi divisions waiting for an amphibious operation that we now all know did not come. Admiral Arthur had another force under his command that very often gets overlooked when it comes time to hand out praise for performance in battle. The United States Coast Guard contingent operating under the United States Navy did and is still doing a superb job in the Gulf. And supporting all of these other forces. Let's hear it for the Coast Guard. And supporting all of these components were special forces operating deep behind enemy lines under command of Colonel Jesse Johnson and a number of others, and a magnificent logistics command under Lieutenant General Gus Pagonis, who made sure that our troops going into battle had everything they needed and they wanted for nothing. I can't tell you how many other commands and commanders were involved in this entire operation. It would take all day. Let me just say it was a textbook joint operations. No service parochialism, no log rolling, each service doing what it does best to ensure victory. It was a great team effort. As I tell you about the great leaders who have helped bring about this victory, I have to tell you about one other leader as well. And since I've arrived at the highest point in the military and the highest point in my career, and I can't go any higher in the military, I'm allowed at this time to praise my boss. Secretary of Defense Dick Cheney's calm, deliberate leadership for the past 7 months has been indispensable and the key to our success. The American people got their money's worth out of Dick Cheney. You should all be very proud of your Secretary of Defense, as we are in the department. Our thanks also go to the families of our GIs, separated from them, worried about them, paying a terrible price in anxiety. Their support was another key to our success. I grieve with those families who have lost loved ones. I wish that we could have fought a war without a single casualty. I wish that not a single soldier had been in that barracks in Dhahran, Saudi Arabia, when the Scud missile struck last Monday night. But all my wishing won't change the reality of war. To those families who have loved ones lost, their soldier, their sailor, their airman or Marine made the supreme sacrifice. To those families who will stand at cemetery sites, hear mournful taps, and receive folded flags amidst tears and great pain, I can only say God bless you and keep you and make your pain gradually subside and let your pride never die. To the wives and husbands, mothers and fathers, children, and all loved ones who kept watch, you have the undying gratitude of your armed forces. And for those American families who still anxiously await word of a loved one missing in action or held prisoner, I make this pledge. In this war, it won't be over until we get a full and immediate accounting for all of our POWs and MIAs. Our troops in the Gulf may have had the finest strategy, and they did. They may have had the finest equipment and training, and they did. Their leaders may have been the very best, and they were. When you boil it all down to the essence of what victory really takes, you come out with people. You come out with the people in a GI's family, and the people and families who knew GIs and supported them. You come out with the people who designed and made Patriot missiles, and M1 tanks, and F-16 aircraft, and Aegis cruisers, and Apache helicopters, and light armored vehicles for our Marines, and all the thousands of other pieces of equipment that gave our troops the decisive edge. You come out with the people who wear a military uniform, but who never got to the war in the Gulf, yet they stand watch for freedom around the world, from Korea to Panama to Germany. You come out with reservists willing to drop everything to respond to the call of duty. You come out with the 900,000 Department of Defense civilians who work tirelessly to support our troops. And the people of state and city legislatures who passed resolutions in support of our men and women. But ultimately, success in war belongs to those on the line who, in a cockpit or a tank or a foxhole, put their lives on the line to win. To each and every one of those brave young Desert Storm troopers goes our heartfelt thanks and undying gratitude. All credit ultimately goes to them. Over the past several months, many people wrote letters to the President and to Secretary Cheney and to me and to all of our troops in the Gulf. Many of the letters to me were from young people throughout America. They asked me to please bring home safely as many of the men and women in the Gulf as we could. These young Americans said they didn't like war. They thought it was senseless. They didn't like killing. But they said they knew this war had a purpose, and they believed in that purpose, and they trusted America's leaders to fulfill that purpose and then to bring the troops home. With the war now over, we will show those young people and all Americans that we will use our victory to build a stable peace in that troubled region. We were never at war with the Iraqi people. We hope a regime will emerge in Baghdad that is committed, finally, to living in peace with its neighbors. And as we work toward that enduring peace, what will happen to America's armed forces. I believe in the years ahead, America must continue to field the very best armed forces in the world, and they must continue to have the best equipment, the best training, the highest readiness, and most important, they must attract and keep high-caliber GIs such as those who fill the ranks today. Secretary Cheney and I will make this goal our first and most important priority in the years ahead. Over the years, the VFW has always kept the faith. As veterans, your courage has never been questioned. But since the Vietnam War, you've had some troubled times, as I have had, and as the rest of America's armed forces have had. You kept the faith with us, and now those troubled times are over. You helped both the armed forces and the nation through some desperate years to keep our honor and our dignity intact. You prodded us through the good budget years of the past decade to use our money wisely and for the right things. We did, and our efforts have paid off. 7 months ago, we had the finest armed forces America had ever fielded in time of peace. That all-volunteer force has now proven itself in time of war. In August at your convention in Baltimore, I told you I believed that a new era of hope was dawning. An era created out of your sacrifice and out of the values and strength of the free world. I went on to say that there were striking differences between the new era and the old era it was replacing. In the old era, NATO stood as the bulwark against Soviet invasion of Western Europe. In this new era, many of our NATO allies answered the call to arms for Operation Desert Storm. Today, we owe a large vote of thanks to those allies and to all members of the Gulf War Coalition. There is no historical precedent for the incredible degree of cooperation and teamwork achieved by the coalition members. Victory is theirs to celebrate as well as America's. Kuwait's liberation is now part of all of our histories. And written into these histories will be an enduring tribute to thousands of brave, dedicated Americans. They will now be known as veterans of foreign wars. Their names may fade from memory. Their individual deeds may be obscured by time, but what they did for freedom will never, never be forgotten. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Jim. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Colin Powell, speaking to the Veterans of Foreign Wars Convention in Washington. Powell did what might have been predictably or what might have been expected after the United States' stunning performance in the Persian Gulf War. He praised all those involved, from the troops on the front line, those who planned and carried it out there and at the Pentagon, down to school children who wrote letters, citing particularly a blind girl from a Mississippi school for the blind who said she could see the yellow ribbons continuing to fly throughout all kinds of weather and conditions in her support for the U.S. forces. He also assured his audience that the Persian Gulf War, in his words, won't be over until there's been a full and prompt accounting for all U.S. POWs. He also added, finally, that the all-volunteer U.S. military had proved itself in time of war. Our coverage of the day's events continues with a brief program note. We had hoped to bring you during this hour a discussion with CNN political analyst William Schneider on the fates of George Bush in the post-war era now and heading up to the 1992 election, and to take your phone calls on that topic. The flow of events has prevented us from doing that, but we will reschedule it and let you know when we do plan to bring that to you. Stay with us.
Your Flex is back.
I started using Flex years ago,
But then they changed it.
bad idea.
But they got smart and changed it back.
And it's better than ever. Good move, Flex. The see-through bottle, the fragrance we love, balsam and silk protein, Flex shine and manageability are back in our hair. Our Flex is back, so we're back to Flex.
You know, I can still remember the very first candy given to me by my grandfather. It was Werther's Original, and I was 4. I had a little trouble opening that shiny golden wrapper, but then, well, I'll never forget that first taste. Sweet and creamy and just plain good. But there was something else, too. I remember feeling I must be somebody very special when my grandpa gave me his wonderful butter candy. So, now I'm the grandfather. And what else would I give my little grandson but my Werther's original? He's somebody special, too.
With Lanier, I can dictate letters, memos, and reports 6 times as fast as I can write them.
Hours after the Iraqis turned over the coalition prisoners to the Red Cross in Baghdad. We have some pictures of those prisoners, including 6 Americans, 3 British, and 1 Italian, who left Baghdad about 5 hours ago and could be arriving in Jordan within an hour or 2. There, they will be met by a Jordanian military helicopter, which will fly them to a military airfield near Amman. The Pentagon won't confirm what happens next, and in fact won't confirm the names of these prisoners, but it's likely they'll go to Wiesbaden, Germany, to the U.S. military hospital, where released prisoners and hostages are normally taken for physical and psychological exams. Here's what we know about the 10 coalition prisoners who the Red Cross says were released today. The Red Cross providing us with these names. Thomas Griffith, who flies the Air Force F-15E fighter plane. David Lockett and Melissa Rathbun-Neely are Army soldiers taken prisoner when their truck was stopped by the Iraqis on the Tap Line Road near the Saudi-Iraqi border. The other 3 Americans are all Navy flyers from the aircraft carrier Saratoga. Lawrence Slade flies an F-14, while Robert Wetzel and Jeffrey Zaun are crewmates on an A-6E. The 3 British prisoners are Malcolm McGowan, John Peters, and Ian Pring, and the 1 Italian is Mauricio Coccioloni. The Pentagon says the newly released American prisoners will be debriefed extensively, but when that's done, they might be allowed to talk to reporters if they want to. John Holloman, CNN Live at the Pentagon.
John, thank you very much.
Battle objective last week. It's believed that 3,000 Marines will begin the journey back to the United States and their loved ones every day until all the Marines and their equipment are out of the Middle East. It was early afternoon, but headlights were on. The sky was turned black by a wind shift that brought heavy, dense smoke from burning oil fields a few miles away. At about the same time, some 25 miles northeast of the city, British Defense Minister Tom King was paying a visit to Britain's 1st Armored Division. His message to the 10,000 tankers and support units was a simple, well done, and we'll get you home as quickly as possible. But King told a news conference the coalition had come a long way, and they would not begin to pull their combat units out precipitously.
We want absolute clear assurances, and not just assurances, but in terms of the prisoners of war, we need to receive them. We need to receive the bodies of those who may have lost their lives. We need to see the release of the detainees as well.
The British cabinet officer was cautious about calls for a war crimes trial for Iraqi President Saddam Hussein and others in his government, but he did not rule it out.
We want to find out what happened. I'm not going to go any further than that this morning. We expect that everybody has been treated as they are required to be treated under the Geneva Conventions. If that's not the case, then I'm not going to comment any further now, but obviously it would be a very serious matter indeed.
King said he had every reason to believe the Iraqis would follow the ceasefire terms laid out in a number of UN resolutions, adding that they really have no choice. There are no large garrisons inside the city, but there are plenty of soldiers on the streets from the United States, Great Britain, and especially now Saudi Arabia. And there are guns everywhere. Mark Dolmage, CNN, Kuwait City.
Many of the troops are in the streets. Many of the troops are in the streets along with the Kuwaitis celebrating tonight. And the gunfire you hear is something that has been ringing through the skies all day. The hospitals report that more than a dozen people have been killed and scores more injured from celebratory gunfire. When the bullets return down to earth, they're hitting people, including children. I'm Tom Intier, CNN, reporting live from Kuwait City.
Well, a great team effort is how the Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman Colin Powell describes the Allied victory in the Gulf. General Powell and the U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Thomas Pickering, both addressed the veterans of foreign wars today at their annual convention in Washington. Powell thanked the public and the families of U.S. personnel for their support. He credits teamwork among the allies for that successful campaign.
Kuwait's liberation is now part of all of our histories. And written into these histories will be an enduring tribute to thousands of brave, dedicated Americans. They will now be known as veterans of foreign wars. Their names may fade from memory. Their individual deeds may be obscured by time. But what they did for freedom will never, never be forgotten.
General Powell said also the war won't be completely over until there is a full accounting of all the prisoners of war and the missing in actions.
Some energy experts say the lost oil from Kuwait's damaged fields will hardly be noticed on world markets. Iraqi troops set fire to more than 500 Kuwaiti oil wells. Experts predict it will take 2 years or more until Kuwait's oil industry is back to normal. But analysts say markets will not feel the loss as long as Saudi Arabia maintains its current production level of 8.5 million barrels a day. In the long run, though, experts say Kuwaiti oil is needed to keep supplies from tightening. Oil prices are rising slightly today. Brent North Sea crude is now selling at $19.35 a barrel. That's up 35 cents from yesterday's close. The U.S. benchmark is now at $19.92 a barrel.
Fears that death might be near. More now from their London interview with CNN's Richard Blystone.
You were the producer on this jaunt. What were you trying to do?
We went right up to the border to have a look-see. There was nothing there. It was endless open space. But we figured this was where the battle was going to be joined, the initial battles were going to be joined. So we wanted to have a few pictures of it. But in order to take pictures of that sort of emptiness, you have to move out into it. And as we walked up the road into it, we saw the bones of sheep and, not people, sheep, just by the road. That seemed like a nice picture, and we took sort of general pictures. And then we saw a jeep coming. By then, we were 200 yards, and it was too far to run back. And by the time they got close, we started to go back, obviously. But by the time they got really close, we realized they'd got guns, and it didn't seem sensible to start running with our backs to them. And they stopped, started shouting, "Peace, peace, no war. Peace, peace, no war." And I guess I was about 10 or 15 feet away from one of them. So I walked across and shook hands with him. And it seemed sort of okay. It didn't seem menacing at that moment. Until after he'd shaken hands with me, he didn't let go of my hand. And then I realized it had gone wrong. And one of the guys had moved around behind us. And we were then in the line of 3 Kalashnikovs. And so we got into the back of the Jeep, and that was the beginning of the 40 days and 40 nights.
Let me turn to Bob now. You were apparently singled out because either you were Jewish or you had worked in Israel.
I figured that of the 4 of us, Roberto and Juan were in the best condition. Juan in particular because he's Nicaraguan. Roberto because of his Cuban background, which they loved. Whenever we went to a new place and they asked us where you're from, and Juan said Nicaragua, and that was good. And Roberto said Cuba, and that was great. And Peter said Britain, and that was bad. And I said America, and that was horrible. I think we all wanted to stay together because, for the obvious reasons, we could give each other strength, and looking at each other was the one consoling thing we could look at. But I also wanted to stay together because I knew that I was in danger of being singled out because of being Jewish, because of being based in Israel. And that this was a continual anxiety for me, and it didn't come up until my last interrogation in the intelligence headquarters, and that's when they said, our sources tell us you have close relations with the government of Israel. Sources tell us you're Jewish. Our sources tell us you work for the Mossad. That's when I knew my number was up. Finished. And
were they still beating you at this point?
The earlier interrogations when they beat us were infinitely more supportable. Because after you've been beaten a couple of times, you realize that, hey, it's extremely unpleasant and it hurts like hell. But after a while, it stops. And you can get through it. But when they terrorize you, when they accuse you of working for the Mossad, the emotions that come out of that do not stop. And they put a terror in your head that just doesn't go away.
Did you get the idea that some of the Iraqi military are more disciplined and more correct than others? The ones who abused you were not under the same command?
The ones that abused us were with the intelligence people. The Iraqi army, the soldiers, treated us correctly. Unfortunately, we were out of the soldiers' hands after 8 days, and for the rest of the time we were in the hands of the intelligence people, and they're beasts.
Do you have any wishes for those of your captors who are still there?
Of the other prisoners, or the...
No, the captors.
I think they should die soon and painfully.
Well, a doctor who examined the 4 men said they're in remarkably good shape considering they've been in prison in such circumstances for 40 days.
Navy pilot Jeffrey Zahn was among the POWs freed by the Iraqi government today. His parents, Calvin and Marjorie Zahn, talked to reporters at their home in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and Mr. Zahn had this reaction to pictures of his son.
I think he looks good. He got all his senses. He's got his eyes, his arms, his legs, and he's walking with a little bigger. I'm great. In order to get the hell out of there. You know what I mean?
Any idea when you'll see him? And are you going to go anywhere to meet him?
We don't know anything about that yet.
What was your move when you saw him on TV this morning, sir?
Well, we elated, pleased, relieved. That's what no matter what they tell you, you like to see him. Like to see him moving. We feel it's over. You know what I mean?
Mrs. Zahn, you're obviously really thrilled by this. Your thoughts about what he's been through and what happens next?
Well, I'm thrilled, but it's tempered a little bit because we still haven't heard from the pilot, Robert Westall, and there's still a lot of POWs and MIAs that we're really concerned about in France work.
Jeffrey Zahn and the other freed POWs are likely to be flown to a medical facility in Wiesbaden, Germany for physical checkups.
And World Day continues right after this.
Lucky dog, my Lucky Dog brand dog food from Purina has the taste of beef, plus chicken, plus cheese, so I love it more than ever. Can't say that about the kids.
Give your dog a Lucky Dog today.
Great, great,
Purina Gravy brand dog food. It's a smash.
Only one network is seen, believed, and quoted in more than 100 countries around the world.
Across the world, phones are ringing. Who's calling?
Hello, Mom.
People who have the AT&T Reach Out World plan. They're saving 20% on calls to friends and family in over 45 countries and areas. Even if you spend only $11 a month on international calls, you'll save on your calls to Mexico, Canada, across the Atlantic, or the Pacific. Dial 1-800-272-WORLD. Then go ahead and call. And the longer you talk, the more you'll save. The low $3 monthly fee gives you over 100 hours a week to save. You'll even get a state-to-state discount. Across America, people are signing up for the AT&T Reach Out World plan because with these savings and all the quality and service you expect from AT&T, it's our best value in international calling. Sign up now.
As you watch this, the world is changing. To find out how and why, you need the latest national and international news, updated every half hour, only on Headline News.
Coalition forces are showing off some of the equipment captured from the Iraqis and telling some of the stories behind these trophies of war. CNN's Greg Lamont reports.
You're riding on an Iraqi tank captured during the U.S. Marine battle for Kuwait International Airport. It is quite a prize, unharmed and totally operational. You'd think this killing machine would be kept for use against possible enemies in the future, or at the very least, as a trophy of war. But as a matter of policy, the tank, along with tens of thousands of other captured weapons, including heavy artillery and small arms, will be destroyed or made inoperable.
We're not allowed to take home any war souvenirs, so what we've done is cut the stocks off the weapons and give them to the individual Marines that captured the weapons, so they can take the stock home and maybe make a desk plate or a name tag, and that is a memory for a souvenir. So we're not going to take any weapons. That's what we've done to them. That's why they look so bad.
But others say some of the seized weapons look bad because of whose hands they were in.
Some units look like they took care of their weapons. Others, they just been left to sit, and I think that's an indicator of why they pulled out the way they did. I think they were poorly led, and I don't think they had the will or believed that we had the will that we did to come in and sacrifice what we would more than they were willing to sacrifice, which was obviously not too much.
Not too much will, but a ton of weapons. And some think if the Iraqis had the belly to fight, they could have put up a good one.
Do you think the Iraqis could have put up a fight if they wanted to with all this stuff?
They probably would have kicked our butt with all the stuff they had. We went back in there by the oil fields, and there was bunkers and bunkers of mortar rounds. There was like hundreds of bunkers of mortar rounds and arty rounds, everything out there. I think they probably would have put up a good fight or kicked our butt, probably.
I think they'd have done a pretty good job, but I still think we'd have beat them.
What the Iraqis didn't have the stomach for was air superiority. And by the time the ground invasion began, they were more than ready to leave their spoils behind in the hands of the victors. Greg Lamont, CNN, Kuwait City.
Just ahead on NewsHour, a check of the top stories of the day, midday trading on Wall Street, a live report from the New York Stock Exchange, and how a drug may replace the scalpel in skin cancer treatment.
Said it released the 10 POWs in line with the positive spirit that prevailed in the desert talk Sunday with Allied military officials. President Bush, accompanied by senior military advisors, told a group of veterans there are real signs of progress and cooperation, but he warned the job's not done yet.
Already, 10 coalition POWs, including several Americans, are on their way back home. But I'll tell you, I don't think any of us, particularly in this audience, and I know I speak for the three up here behind me in this stage, can relax at all until every single one of those prisoners is home and every single missing is accounted for to the best of the ability of the Iraqi forces, and also that the Kuwaiti detainees are returned, every single one of them. And that's our goal.
President Bush said there is much work to be done, and there continues to be work in cleaning and clearing Iraqi minefields, but he says Iraq has provided that information. Now we go to the Pentagon for the daily briefing.
Good afternoon to you all. We will hear from Lieutenant General Tom Kelly, Director of Operations for the Joint Staff. I will not say that anymore after today, by the way. And Captain Dave Harrington is with us today. I promoted you on the spot, though. I think that counts. Let me just tell you what our briefing schedule is. We will brief, obviously we're briefing today at 3 o'clock. We'll do the same thing tomorrow. CENTCOM's next briefing in Riyadh will be on Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time or 7 p.m. their time. Then we will not brief this Wednesday. They're briefing Wednesday. We won't brief here. And then starting Thursday, we revert to our normal through most of the year type schedule, which is that we brief here Tuesdays and Thursdays at noon. So tomorrow will be our last briefing at 3 o'clock. And the briefers tomorrow will be, I don't know who from the intelligence staff, but it'll be, what is it, Lieutenant General? No, Major General Brantner from the Marine Corps will be our briefer tomorrow from the operations staff. General Kelly will walk you through today, bring you up to date on what's happening to the prisoners of war that have been released and now officially accepted by the United States. He'll discuss with you part of the terms that were worked out that we gave to the Iraqis over the weekend on how to avoid conflicts and then we'll be happy to take your questions. So with that,
have anything on the ceasefire?
be happy to answer all your questions about all of that. Gentlemen.
Good afternoon again. I'll change the format here a little bit because the situation has dramatically changed from what it was. First, on the talks between the Iraqis and the coalition forces, control measures have been set up to prevent contact between the two. We'll leave this map up. You'll see a line drawn here on the map. And U.S. forces are south of that line and east of that line, and the Iraq lies on the other side. I don't want to say Iraqi forces because there aren't that many. And that represents a sort of a cordon sanitaire. Neither force will come within 1,000 meters of that line, 0.6 of a mile. And the Iraqis will not be able to operate aircraft within 10 kilometers, 10,000 meters, or 6.2 miles of that line. With proper coordination, they may be able to operate helicopters within that 10-mile area for administrative flights and things of that nature. So in that way, we hope to have the forces separated, and we'll leave that up for you. The Iraqis have provided information on the location of land and sea mines. It's still going to be a very difficult job to get them out, as I'm sure you appreciate, especially the sea mines, because some of them are moored, some of them have broken loose from their moorings and are floating, and some are bottom mines, and they're very tough to find even if you have the location because they tend to bury into the silt and mud on the bottom. POW exchanges were discussed, however, the agreements are not complete yet on them. The coalition has provided the Iraqis with the names of all of the coalition MIAs in hopes that some of their POWs are in fact MIAs. You'll recall we carried them as MIAs because we weren't sure. And as a matter of fact, in the cases of the 6 people who were released today, 3 of them were in fact carried as MIAs and 3 were carried as POWs. The coalition withdrawal is contingent on the signing of a formal ceasefire agreement. As you know, 10 people were released today, 6 U.S., 2 UK, 1 Italian, and 1 Kuwaiti. I have the names of the U.S. that were released, U.S. individuals. Lieutenant Jeffrey Zaun, Z-A-U-N, Lieutenant Robert Wetzer, W-E-T-Z-E-R.
Wetzel, I think it is.
L? Okay, Wetzel, yeah, you're right. Major Thomas Griffith, G-R-I-F-F-I-T-H. Lieutenant Lawrence Slade, S-L-A-D-E. Specialist Melissa Neely, Specialist Melissa Neely, and Specialist David Lockett, both of the Army. They have been released to U.S. custody in Jordan. As you know, they'll be flown to Bahrain, where they'll be embarked on the hospital ship Mercy for examination. They will eventually be flown back to the U.S., but I don't know when that's going to occur. I feel sure it's going to occur just as soon as is humanly possible, but we don't have a date on them and on that, and part of it would be contingent on what condition they're in. We do not know for sure how many U.S. POWs are left in Iraqi hands. We feel there should be at least 6, and we hope considerably more than that. We hope many of the 38 or so MIAs could be POWs. The MIA missing in action breakout is Army 4, Navy 7, Air Force 20, and Marine Corps 7. We presently have over 540,000 troops in theater. Expect that number to begin to turn around soon. Casualties are 98 killed, and these numbers are fluctuating a little bit as additional reports come in. 308 wounded, 35 MIA. I said 38 earlier, but 3 of them were the 3 that came out today, and POWs minimum of 6. Enemy prisoners of war in Saudi Arabia, at least 63,000, and it's an incredible logistic burden in trying to get that settled down. And in Turkey, 3,000 plus. 800 Iraqi EPWs are in U.S. medical facilities. 80% of them are wounded in action, were wounded in action. 2 died of malnutrition or dehydration. Over 600 fires are still burning. Minor repositioning of U.S. forces continues. There were a couple of engagements this weekend. The 82nd Airborne at Talil Airfield captured 20 aircraft and over 1,000 enemy prisoners of war as they were clearing that airfield. There were no U.S. casualties. And the 24th Mech Division on Saturday was engaged by an Iraqi unit of about a reinforced battalion size, for what reason I can't imagine. The 24th returned fire and captured or destroyed 81 tanks, 95 armored personnel carriers, 5 artillery tubes, 11 Frog missiles, that's a free rocket overground, the short-range job, 23 trucks, and took 3,000 enemy prisoners of war. There were no U.S. casualties. The 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment, again an Army unit, captured 3 anti-aircraft guns, 3 BRDMs, a reconnaissance-type vehicle, 6 artillery tubes, 3 multiple launch rocket systems, several tanks, and 53 enemy prisoners of war. In 2 separate incidents, 1 U.S. soldier and 1 U.S. Marine were killed by mines on the battlefield, and that will be a continuing problem because it's my guess that that these mines were not put in with a great deal of discipline, so they could be anywhere. And we'll take extreme measures to avoid them in the future. Control measures established in discussion with the Iraqis should reduce the likelihood of further engagements. The control measure I'm talking about is the one you see right there. Iraqi equipment destroyed. Remember, we're still policing the battlefield, but tanks 3,300. You recall the J2, Mike McConnell said intuitively he felt about 4,000 on Friday, but 3,300 is what we are sure of, 3,300 plus. 2,100 armored vehicles, 2,200 plus artillery pieces. Air operations are continuing on a watchful basis. We are flying some reconnaissance, and we are flying reconnaissance over Baghdad. Naval operations, Falaka Island has been retaken with no Iraqi resistance. 1,400 enemy prisoners of war resulted from that. We are conducting defensive counter-air, mine removal, reconnaissance, and maritime intercept operations. 125 mines have been destroyed. With regard to Bubiyan and Warba Islands, we have not taken them, but reconnaissance has been conducted over them, and no Iraqis were noted, so that ought to be a fairly simple thing to do. We'll now try to address your question, Chester.
Yes, General. Did you say that the prisoners of war have already been returned and handed over to U.S. authority and are already in the air flying to Bahrain?
No, they are in U.S. custody right now. The plan is to fly them from Saudi Arabia to Bahrain, where they will go aboard the hospital ship for checks and then hopefully be sent home as soon as possible. But I don't know exactly what the arrangements for that are, what the timing is.
As far as you know, where are they right now?
In Jordan, in a town called Ruwaishid or Ruwaishid. Yeah.
General Kelly.
Yes, sir.
Have they given us any explanation for where the other at least 6 POWs are?
Not yet. That's one of the things we're waiting for, and as you might have noted from the UN resolutions, they have to comply with all of these terms, before a formal ceasefire will be fired, and we're hoping to get that information very soon. Don't have it yet.
Is there any reason postulated for why it was easy to produce the ones that they produced today, but the others are someplace else that they can't be produced?
No reason that I know of, other than the fact that I think their administration probably is a little bit bollocksed up right now because of what's happened to them. But it's to their great advantage to get that information to the coalition forces as soon as they can, because that is a clear requirement for further progress. And of course, it's not only the small number of U.S. and coalition prisoners and MIAs, it's also possibly a very large number of Kuwaiti citizens who were taken hostage. I think the situation in southern Iraq is chaotic. As a matter of fact, I don't think it is. No, it is. And so they might be having some problem there. But we're pressing them, and I think it'll be fairly soon, at least as far as the coalition casualties or MIAs and POWs are concerned. Yes, sir.
What is our best information on the situation in and around Basra in terms of who, if anyone, is in control, who seems to be leading the armed opposition, if there is armed opposition, whether it's a similar situation in other cities, and whether this is potentially regime threatening?
Yeah, I'm going to start out and then let Dave get a little bit more deeply into it. The situation in Basra is confused, but there is some conflict going on there. We see, for example, a T-55 tanks, and that reads Iraqi Army. We see T-72 tanks, and that reads Republican Guards. And we're not sure they're both on the same side right now. In the vicinity of one of the holy places, there are large groups of citizens gathered. There was a large group of citizens gathered. It looks like there is some anti-regime resistance going on there, but whether it will be successful or not, don't know. Who's fighting who? We don't know. All we have are pictures from the air right now. We don't have anybody there. There are conflicts apparently in 6 or more other cities. And Dave, if you want to add to that, please do.
That's absolutely correct. We see the problem has now spread to at least 6 cities, maybe a couple more than that. What we've seen are fires raging, not raging, that's the wrong term. We've seen buildings, structures, perhaps some government buildings that are on fire in some of those cities. We've also seen vehicles on fire in some of those cities. We've also seen military checkpoints set up at strategic intersections within some of those cities, which was exactly the kinds of things that we saw in place in Kuwait City. So we assess from that there is some kind of very stringent control going on within parts of the strategic part of the city. We also have some reports that are unconfirmed at this point that there is some violence, and by that I mean there are perhaps groups of forces that could be firing at one another. But that's all is very confusing at this point. It's safe to say that we do have violence in at least 6 cities, and from that we'll have to just wait and see what develops.
What are the names? What are the names? Do you have them?
Well, the 2 major cities are Najaf and Basra, and the others, at this point, I don't recall the names, but it's all in the southern part of Iraq.
Follow-up?
Captain?
Sir.
Just following on this, could you tell us what threat or problems this creates for the Allied troops, this apparent civil war, and should the government of Saddam Hussein try to send troops in to break up this civil unrest, what action, if any, would U.S. and Allied forces take?
First, calling it an apparent civil war at this stage of the game is going a little bit far. We know there's unrest, and we know there's fires, and we know there's probably some shooting in these 6 or so cities. It appears that the Iraqi regime right now is trying to put this down, whatever this is, if it's an insurrection, a civil war, civil disobedience, or what have you. It seems to me, first of all, any decision on what we would do would be made at the highest U.S. levels, but it seems to me that there are 2 aspects to it. Number one, unless it became very serious, I don't think we'd intervene. We never have had any desire to take over Iraq. Number 2, one of the dangers is it could slow down the implementation of the UN and coalition demands, which would result in a ceasefire, which could conceivably slow us down in being able to get our prisoners of war back, our own prisoners of war, and could slow down getting our forces out of Iraq. But one would hope that won't happen, and that we'll be able to do that fairly soon.
What about just in terms of safety? Does this create any problems, even though fighting has ended, any problems for the safety of U.S. or Allied forces if there is civil unrest, or however you want to characterize it?
No, I don't think it would. I don't think it presents us with a security problem, us being the coalition. They cannot come back at us. Those numbers I gave you were not as high as our intuition says they should be, the number of tanks and things like that destroyed, but they do represent 75% of what that army was in the Kuwaiti theater of operations. I think we can say without any question at all, the Iraqi military does not have any offensive capability left. They're executing what appears to be a police action inside Iraq proper. We don't know who's on what side, but in situations like this, historically, frequently, which way the military went had a strong influence on the outcome of the event. Yes, sir.
If it's not going to cause us to do anything until it's very serious, what would you define as very serious if it's not a threat?
Situational. It's very hard to say that. When it came to the point that it was threatening coalition forces in any way, that would be serious. Internally, what it's doing to Iraq itself, that would be extremely hard for me to postulate what would be serious there. What we would do is continue to watch it as closely as we can and report to the leadership what it is that we're finding. We see nothing now that indicates that we should become involved.
A serious threat to the stability of the current regime in Iraq, would you intervene in that?
That's a question that you should ask of those who are far more senior and wise than I am. but we have never indicated that we had any intention of becoming involved in a threat to the regime that was internal to Iraq. Yes, sir.
Can you assess for us what the release of all of the Iraqi POWs might do to the situation in Basra?
I would say to the situation not only in Basra but the situation in Iraq. If we release the 60,000 plus soldiers back in there, it seems to me it would exacerbate that situation a great deal, because I don't think there would be very many happy soldiers going back that would continue to support the regime, based on the fact that many of them, when they came over, did so voluntarily and didn't fight very hard.
So
yes, sir.
Could you speculate a little further about, will it cause further unrest? Do you expect something to happen? Are you looking for something to happen?
No. And you know, speculation is something that we don't become involved in. We don't even have an agreement on when this prisoner exchange, in terms of large numbers, is going to take place. So that would be pretty tough to speculate on. Yes, sir.
You seem to imply that there could be a split in the Iraqi military when you implied that T-72s are facing off T-55 tanks. Can you give us another characterization of that, or tell us more about that? And can you then tell us roughly how many of the EPWs being held in Saudi Arabia have expressed their desire to go home? What percent want to stay? What percent want to go home?
First, what I didn't say, just to clarify, was that T-55s and T-72s were squaring off against each other. We haven't seen that. We have seen groups of tanks, some of which were T-55s, and that's Iraqi Army, some of which are T-72s, that's Republican Guard, and they're both apparently trying to exert an influence on the situation, and we don't know who's on what side. The surmise would be probably the Republican Guard is loyal to the regime and the Army is not. Don't know that for sure. I have utterly no idea, other than intuitive, which percentage of the POWs we have expressed a desire not to go back to Iraq. If it's anything like those that expressed a happy desire to come to Saudi Arabia, then it might well be very high. But you can imagine interviewing 60,000 plus people and finding out from them what their desires are is a major logistics undertaking. I think that will unfold, but I don't know what the answer is now.
Is there a General,
yes,
do you know anything about the whereabouts of Saddam Hussein, and whether the video we saw yesterday was taken recently?
Don't know where he is. I don't know if that video was authentic in terms of being taken the day before. I think I said before I thought he was hiding out in civilian areas. That's no longer necessary, because we're not attacking Baghdad. I don't know where he is. I don't know how much authority he's exercising, although I did note on the video that he didn't look in the pink. Do you want to add anything to that?
I don't really have anything that I can add to that. I don't have any idea.
What do you mean he didn't look in the pink?
He looked tired, he looked haggard, he had bags under his eyes, he looked like a...
Physical disabilities that were...
Not that I could see, because as you know, he was sitting very still, but he just didn't look hale and hearty and didn't look like he was enjoying himself.
General,
yes,
regarding the situation in Basra, there were reports that there were also some Shiite elements either sympathetic to or supported by Iran. Is that figure into the fighting, or...?
It could. As you know, the Shiites and Shias have been a problem for each other since about the year 800, I guess, but I don't have any definite proof. Dave, Iranian influence?
Well, that would be a good assumption that they're involved, certainly, and particularly since An-Najaf, which is the holiest of all cities for the Shiites, is also one of those places in which we seem to have some unrest going on. So I think that's a valid assumption at this point.
But we're not sure, so we couldn't say it with any.
Question on the POWs. Could you tell us briefly what it is that they will do when they get on the ship? When will they be debriefed, or will you wait? Will they see the families first? How will this work, if I may?
Well, the first thing they'll get is a full medical checkup to find out if they're okay, can they travel, that type of thing. I think in terms of debriefing, there's not going to be a great deal of effort on that, other than, do you know of any other POWs and where may they have been, and we'll try to build a book on that. But that really doesn't have to happen there. If there's a great sense of anxiety about getting them home, they can be brought home and be debriefed on the airplane coming back, be debriefed on the ground here. So I think that what they're about to enter is a very nice realm. Everybody's going to be very pleasant to them. They're going to enjoy it. They've been through a tough time. Being a prisoner is a very debilitating thing, and it'll probably take them a long time to get over it, and we'll bend every effort towards trying to accommodate their every need. Yes, sir.
General, has anyone been in contact with U.S. forces that purports to represent these factions fighting inside Iraq, requesting aid or assistance from the U.S.?
Not to my knowledge.
No, I don't have any information on that.
General,
yes, sir.
Do you have any, there were some sporadic reports earlier today out of the Middle East that some of Saddam's top military aides, including his defense minister, were executed. Do you have any information on that at all?
Have done it all to close society. You know, it's a good point counterpoint, even though you often feel that we don't tell you enough. We're subjected to standing up here and defending the position. He doesn't have to do that there, and we don't have a lot of intelligence, human intelligence on the ground, so we don't know. I would say that being a general in his army is probably not a growth industry right now. And I would also say that being a Saddam Hussein is not a growth industry right now.
General?
Yes, sir.
In the debriefing of U.S. POWs that you were just describing, will you be asking them about their treatment, the specifics about...
Absolutely, sure.
What kinds of things would you be asking in that?
How was it? Were they nice to you? We'll be asking you if there were any untoward things done to them that would violate the Geneva Conventions, all of which will go into a data bank for future actions, obviously. Yes, ma'am.
There's evidently a report in Dhahran that's just recently come out in the last few minutes about a snag developing in the exchange of prisoners. Do you happen to know of any snag that's developing in the exchange of prisoners so far as perhaps the 300 tomorrow, or is everything, so far as you're aware, going according to plan?
I don't know. I know that with the 6 Americans who came out today, that appears to be going okay. They're in U.S. custody. They should fly over to Bahrain. With regard to the 300 for tomorrow, it is, I don't know of a snag. It's very possible that one could develop, especially if the command and control authority in Iraq was in a process of flux or was threatened. They might just say, hold everything until we can get this worked out. We don't know what's going on inside that country, but it appears that whatever's going on is not good.
General, a quick question on this, the line that you've drawn here in southern Iraq. Could you just explain to us how this process works, the ceasefire? Once there's a formal ceasefire agreement, that doesn't necessarily mean the U.S. and allied troops will withdraw from that line.
It doesn't necessarily mean that, but a real spur to get Iraq to comply with the ceasefire demands is that the allied forces are sitting in, you know, I guess it's not a third of the country anymore because we don't count this part, but it's a pretty good sized piece of real estate, something Iraq would not want to lose. It's right along the major river valley in the country, so they want to get the American forces out. If a ceasefire is signed, which means that they have complied with the UN demands and the coalition demands, and it looks like they are going to continue to comply with them, then my surmise would be that the forces would move out of that area, and that area would be returned to Iraq. As you know, it's been said many times, we have no territorial ambitions vis-a-vis Iraq, but it is a pretty good hedge against them not complying. Yes, sir.
Could you say what Iraqi forces are still in that area south of the line? And what happens to them if they move towards the line?
If they threaten U.S. forces, they'll be either engaged or they'll be taken as prisoners of war, just as happened over the weekend.
But you expect most of the move, I mean, the 0.6 of a mile, you would expect, I mean, you're mainly aimed at them not moving down south from northern Iraq. I mean, have you essentially cleared out that area beneath the line?
Going up this river valley would be very difficult for them based on the location of this line. Most Iraqi forces that we see, and we see most of them, are getting out this way and coming up this way to try to get back to Baghdad. There are some incredible traffic jams there. What we would expect to find inside this area now is very little. I would think 1s or 2s, people who were lost, people who didn't get the word. I'm quite sure there are no major units left there now. I'm hoping the one that was engaged Saturday, and that's major units in quotations, a residual of a brigade, was the last one. Yes, sir.
Can you talk to us about command and control for a second? You were destroying most of their command and control for weeks. How are they coordinating getting their troops out? And also, could that be what's underlying this unrest? Lack of command and control?
First of all, their command and control has been severely degraded. That's tough luck, but we didn't start this war. They can still command and control their troops. If you get right down, they're not under any particular threat right now. At worst, they can mount a guy with 26-mile legs and a message and send him out to tell people what to do. The problem that they have right now in getting those troops out is that there are a lot of bottlenecks up there because one of our primary targets during the war was to attack their lines of communications, which incidentally appeared to be exceptionally successful based on some of the sadder stories that are coming out of those troops about not being fed. Whether that's adding to the unrest or not is problematic, but what you have on your hands returning to Iraq is a beaten army. And beaten armies can be politically dangerous. They were subjected to 8 years of battle in the Iran-Iraq War and lost 200,000. Most of the same people were dragged into this after they gave Iran back everything, forced into a cauldron which they could never understand, and were rapidly defeated, taking a lot of casualties. So I would guess that if they're human beings, and they are, they're thinking they got stabbed in the back by the regime and they present a threat to the regime. That's my opinion.
But can you speculate on whether they can communicate with one another, or is that what's underlying?
I think that they have the capability to do tactical communications. The problem is the chain of command's broken down, so who do you communicate with? One of the most important things a military guy has is signal operations instructions so he can look up what net to get on. Right now they're probably searching or on channel 16 or something like that, because the command structure doesn't exist.
Yes. Let's return to this whole issue of unrest. How are you able to know if any deal or agreement that Schwarzkopf reached with their officials is going to hold in light of this unrest?
Well, that's always the danger. Anytime you reach an agreement with anybody, are they going to abide by it? I would say that there is a lot of incentive to abide by it because we just proved that we can get over there in one heck of a hurry. Even though some may say 6 months is a long time, that's 7,000 miles away, and we started from zero. And we already have a lot of force there, and we will not be fooled with.
I'm not talking about their sincerity. I'm talking about their ability if there's an upheaval taking place, even if they are operating in good faith.
I think if there's an upheaval taking place and the situation is becoming disastrous inside Iraq, we can sit there and watch it knowing that we can protect ourselves and see what the outcome is. And it seems to me of any 10 individual outcomes, 9 of them would be beneficial.
Let's do a couple.
General?
Yes, sir.
General, have there been any conclusions reached on why the Iraqi army didn't use what many said was their ace in the hole, their chemical weapons stock? Have many chemical weapons even been found in the theater?
The answer is no, not many chemical weapons have been found in the theater. A. B, the Iraqi army was very uncomfortable, we're finding out from PWs, about the use of chemical weapons because they're not that familiar with it. And C, many of the soldiers in the Iraqi army didn't even have chemical protection equipment, so they weren't in very good shape to use it in the first place. We didn't know all those things before the fact, but that appears to be what the situation is. Yes, ma'am.
You talked about reconnaissance flights over Baghdad. Do we have any assurance, for starters, that those reconnaissance flights won't be harassed or shot down or whatever by whatever remains of their air defense network in Baghdad? And secondly, are reconnaissance flights also overflying some of these troubled cities you've described today?
Well, we don't want to talk too much about other reconnaissance flights. The answer is yes. We are flying over Baghdad. We've got another 1,200 airplanes to help in that effort if they want to start shooting at us. I don't think they're going to do that. Plus, they already agreed to the conditions with General Schwarzkopf, and they were in no position to disagree, and I think the most foolish thing they could do would be to start shooting at U.S. aircraft.
So this was one of the conditions.
Will a formal ceasefire affect the reconnaissance flights over Baghdad?
Could well. Yes, it could well affect the...
You said something about not approaching up to 10 kilometers of the line.
Yeah, but we're in the catbird seat. We're saying we're not going within 10 kilometers of the line with aircraft, their aircraft, but we're flying over Baghdad, and there it is.
All right, thank you very much.
Just one little comment. This is my last day to talk to you, and Friday will be my last day of work, and I'm going to go off and do other things. I'd just like to say that, believe it or not, I've enjoyed this little interlude. Got a lot of letters from people who really don't understand the hurly-burly and give and take of a press briefing. And at no time were you ever impolite to me, and at no time did I ever become offended. And as you know, I hold a lot of you in great respect. And the last thing I'd like to say is that having a free press has served the United States well for 215 years. It is a crucial element in our democracy. And if anybody needs a contrast, all they have to do is look at the country that didn't have a free press and see what happened there. So deep down, you're a good bunch of guys, although that doesn't often come to the surface. And I've enjoyed working with you. Good luck and God bless you.
Thank you very much, General Kelly. Let's see, some other details here. Captain Harrington mentioned that there were 5 cities in which the U.S. intelligence community has 6, and I've got 5 of the names for you. He mentioned that there were 6 cities in which we had detected some, 5 beyond the one he already told you. He told you Al-Basra. I think he also mentioned Al-Najaf. The others that we know of, the other 3 names that I have for you now, and I'll have to check on number 6, would be An-Nasiriyah and As-Samawa and Karbala. So I'll have to check on number 6.
I'm sorry, the
Sure,
second
let
to
me do
last
them
one
again.
was-
I'll do them all. Number 1 is Al-Basra. Okay, now I've got all 6. So Al-Basra, An-Najaf. Well, this doesn't match the name of the cities I got earlier. Colonel Monteverdi? It's a better list, all right? Forget what I just told you. Basra and Najaf. Kumayt, K-U-M-A-Y-T. Now, this is obviously the transliteration spellings, and, you know, you look at different Arabic maps of Arabic cities, and there's a lot of ways to spell them, but I'll give you the ways I have it. Then Al-Amarah, A-L, new word, A-M-A-R-A-H. Az-Zubair, 2 words, A-Z, second word, Z-U-B-A-Y-R. And Qualat Falih, Q-U-A-L-A-T-F-A-L-I-H. And that's the best information that I have to this point on the 6 cities.
And you would say that what was going on there? Civil unrest?
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to what General Kelly and Admiral McConnell told you about that. Now, some details about the prisoners of war. The U.S., the 6 U.S. personnel, 3 of whom we indicated as prisoners of war and 3 missing Americans. That's Major Griffith, Specialist Lockett, Specialist Neely, Lieutenant Slade, Lieutenant Wetzel, and Lieutenant Zahn. They drove from Baghdad to Ruwayshed, which is about 45 miles inside Jordan, is the best information that I have on where it is. They were met there by the U.S. ambassador to Jordan, Roger Harrison. Their plan from that point on is that they will fly to King Abdullah Air Base in Jordan, which is about 9 miles north of Amman. And from there, they will fly to Bahrain, where the USNS Mercy, the hospital ship Mercy, is moored, and they will be taken aboard the Mercy at Manama. I don't believe they actually go through Saudi Arabia. The reason we're doing it this way, not all the releases may work this way, but the best way that they could work out the logistics on this one is to take them to Jordan and then to Bahrain. And that's the plan, and I think they should be to Bahrain, to the Mercy, on board the Mercy, the hospital ship, by sometime this evening. I don't know the time, but sometime this evening Eastern time, so before midnight, certainly, before this day is out. Let me put it that way. Let me just get through this one, and then I'll take your questions. Now, Thelma asked a question. The next release of prisoners would be from the coalition forces, the release of 300 or so Iraqi prisoners. That's the agreement that was, or that's what we decided that we would do. That's what we said we would do based on the meeting in the desert yesterday, that they would release coalition prisoners of war, which they have obviously now done, and that there would be a reciprocal release of about 300 Iraqi prisoners. And the original plan was to release some tomorrow, but the best information that I have, Thelma, the most recent thing that I have, is that that may slip 24 hours or so. It may be tomorrow, it may be Wednesday. But the Saudis are reporting a technical delay in releasing the 300 prisoners tomorrow. It may happen, it may not. I don't know what is meant by a technical delay. That's the most up-to-date information that I have on that. Okay, Juan?
Yeah, I was just wondering if the released POWs are in as good a shape as they seem to look. How long do you think they'll be on the ship before returning home?
I can't, I have no way to know the answer to that. Number one, I don't know what sort of shape they're in. I imagine that Ambassador Harrison will make some sort of radio communications or try to get in touch with us, what his impressions are, but there's no way to know how long they'll be on the ship. Obviously, they're going to have interest in getting back and seeing their families, and we'd like to see them get back as soon as possible, but I don't know how long that'll be.
Will they be flown to Andrews, or how will that work?
Don't know. Can't say beyond the Mercy. Bob?
Sure. Could you review the steps now still remaining that precede a ceasefire, and your best expectations at this point as to when the ceasefire will go into effect?
Well, I can't predict when it will go into effect because it's very much up to the Iraqis. It's very much up on what they do, but let's just walk through it a little bit. First of all, General Schwarzkopf and General Khalid, participating on behalf of the coalition forces, met the Iraqi military participants yesterday in the desert. Iraq agreed immediately to begin releasing prisoners of war and missing folks classified as missing in action through the International Red Cross. The coalition gave the Iraqis a list of those that we hold as MIAs, that we list as missing in action, and asked for as much information on these as possible. Iraq provided information on the location of minefields in Kuwait and international waters, and Iraq agreed on control measures to ensure that armed units of the coalition forces don't come in contact with armed units of the Iraqi military to guard against accidental engagements that could trigger hostile fire. That's what this line is all about. The 1 kilometer on each side, or 0.6 of a mile on each side of this line, there are to be no military units in that zone on either side of that line. That's what General Kelly was talking to you about earlier. None of our vehicles, none of their vehicles. Now, there are exceptions to that. You can, for special reasons, if you have to go back and forth or something, you can get permission. There's a protocol that can be worked out. The vehicles have to have a special identification mark. And then the other part of it, which General Kelly also mentioned to you, is that the Iraqis will not fly their aircraft within 10 kilometers or 6 miles of the line, 6.2 miles of the line. In other words, they won't come south closer than 6.2 miles from that north of that line. And that's the protocol that was worked out to avoid accidental engagements. Now, that's what they agreed on yesterday in the desert. Also over the weekend, the UN Security Council met and passed Resolution 686. That resolution, we can certainly make a copy of it available to you at our Directorate for Defense Information, but it reaffirmed the previous 12 resolutions that dealt with the subject of Kuwait and Iraq. It set the term for further demands on Iraq that are necessary to end the conflict. And then it says, and this is a quote right out of the resolution, it says, in order to secure the rapid achievement of a definitive end to the hostilities, Iraq shall notify the Secretary General and the Security Council when it has taken the action set out above. So what has to happen now is that Iraq has to comply with not only the terms that were given to the Iraqi officials in the desert yesterday, but also with the terms given to Iraq through the United Nations. Now, one way to look at it is that the United Nations is the umbrella under which this is all happening, and then General Schwarzkopf and General Khalid laid out some specific terms in the desert yesterday, and the United Nations Security Council, in passing the resolution, laid out the other terms. So that kind of walks you through what has to happen next. Melissa?
Does that mean, for instance, that reparation payments need to have been made before a final formal ceasefire is concluded, or?
No, you need to look at the UN resolution. It says that they must, specifically on that issue, Iraq must accept in principle its liability under international law for any loss, damage, or injury arising in regard to Kuwait and third states and their nationals and corporations as a result of the invasion and illegal occupation of Kuwait by Iraq. Yes?
About the prisoners, have the 300 already been interviewed as to any desire not to go back, and are those requests being honored in every case?
Well, I'm assuming that that they've all indicated they would like to go back, and I'm told now by Colonel Monteverdi that the last word we have from CENTCOM Thelma is that it's back on, that the 300 prisoner exchange is back on track for tomorrow. So if it's changed twice already in the period of 20 minutes, we'll try to keep you posted. But my understanding is that the general understanding of the terms of the Geneva Conventions say that no prisoner of war should be returned against his or her own will. That this interpretation is widely supported by the countries who are signatories to the Geneva Conventions and by the International Red Cross and by the United Nations. All those agencies agree that that's what the upshot of the Geneva Conventions is on that issue.
How were those 300 chosen? Do you know?
No, I don't. Iraq is handling, or excuse me, Saudi Arabia is handling that part of it.
In other words, were they asked how many 300 want to step forward and go back?
The Saudis handle that specific part of it. Cool?
Where will that transfer take place?
Don't know. Again, that's something the Saudis will do, and I don't know what the answer is.
Will it be open to coverage?
I don't know. I don't know any of the details of it. This is something the Saudis will handle. We'll try to find out what we can for you on. Keenan?
Pete, what is the latest information we have on the non-military folks being held by the Iraqis? How many there are, where they're being held, and if anything is happening to them? Any information you can share with us on that?
No, that's part of what we asked for. That's part of what General Schwarzkopf asked for in his meeting in the desert, and also as part of the UN Security Council resolution, the one that was passed over the weekend, 686, it says that Iraq should immediately release, under the auspices of the International Red Cross, all Kuwaiti and third country nationals detained by Iraq and return the remains of any deceased Kuwaiti and third country nationals so detained. The only ones that I know are the 4 from CBS News that were released early Saturday morning Eastern Time. But we've asked, obviously, for an accounting. Don't know what their status is.
Do you have any number, any estimate how many there are, and if not, how are you able to ascertain then if they have actually complied fully with that?
I don't, and I don't know the answer to the question. I mean, we don't know precisely how many Kuwaiti nationals were taken away. We have some sense of those civilians that are unaccounted for, those U.S. civilians that are unaccounted for. Yeah.
With regard to the POWs for any nation, are all of the ones that were shown on TV in this first group being released, the ones we thought were injured?
I'll have to go back and check the original list of those that were shown by the Iraqis on Iraqi television shortly after they were captured. We can check that for you. We never worked specifically off that list, but let me go back and check what that original list was. Emily?
Have the Saudis agreed to keep any of the Iraqi soldiers that don't want to go back to Iraq?
I don't know that. I don't know what would become of them. I mean, obviously, if they decide not to go back to Iraq, they cannot be forced to go back, but what they would do or what their status would be, I don't know. Yes.
What's your understanding?
And Pete Williams cleaning up some of the details, the operational details in that Pentagon briefing. As the Pentagon briefings wind down, the news as it was out of that briefing was primarily provided by Lieutenant General Thomas Kelly, informing us that there is now confirmable evidence of disruptions and chaos of some sort or another in at least 6 Iraqi cities in the south of that country. Apparently, many of the retreating members of the Iraqi Regular Army, perhaps some civilians as well, revolting against established authority. No specific details there, although General Kelly said that there does indeed seem to be some sense within the POW ranks and others that this whole operation was a stab in the back by the Saddam Hussein regime. But again, too soon to say whether this is regime threatening, as General Kelly was asked. In addition, some final numbers, at least as they stand at this time, on U.S. casualties. According to General Kelly, 98 killed, 308 wounded, and 35 still missing in action, although it is presumed that some of those, at least 6 of them, are prisoners of war, and these U.S. officials said they look forward to their return as quickly as possible. Pete Williams also providing some information that some 300 Iraqi prisoners of war will be handed over by the Saudis, turned back over to the Iraqis tomorrow if all continues to go on as planned. And Lieutenant General Kelly will be a guest on Larry King Live tomorrow night, Tuesday, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. Our coverage will continue.
Recently, DuPont announced that its energy unit would pioneer the use of new double-hulled oil tankers in order to safeguard the environment. The response has been overwhelmingly positive. DuPont, better things for better living.
A lot of you insist on eating wheat thins and oat thins because they taste good. But the whole idea behind these crackers is that you can eat them without feeling guilty. That's why they're baked, not fried. I mean, eat them because they're delicious, and you miss the whole point.
Did you know that you can send beautiful flowers like these anytime, anywhere to anyone by calling one phone number? The number is 1-800-FLOWERS because now more than 10,000 of America's finest florists have the same telephone number, 1-800-FLOWERS. All you need is a telephone and a major credit card. Just pick up the phone and call 1-800-FLOWERS. 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, toll free. 1-800-Flowers. We're the 24-hour worldwide florist.
A TNT exclusive premiere. 1862.
It's going to be a long war.
Both sides thought they had created the ultimate secret weapon.
2 layers of iron plate. They can't sink the Merrimack with standard guns.
Blow it up.
We know about the ironclad from a spy.
Now, TNT recreates the most extraordinary battle of the Civil War. Ironclads. Monday, March 11th.
Now for a look at our top stories. The first 10 Allied POWs set free by Iraq have arrived in Jordan after their release today by the Iraqi government. The 6 Americans, 3 Britons, and 1 Italian are described as being in good shape. The Pentagon says the Americans are in the hands of U.S. officials and will soon be flown to Bahrain for examination aboard the hospital ship Mercy. President Bush told U.S. veterans today he will not relax until all U.S. captives and those considered missing are accounted for. And Mr. Bush said the ceasefire is holding for the most part, despite Iraqi claims the Allies are flying over Baghdad in violation of the stated agreement. Mr. Bush said his goal in the wake of the military victory over Iraq is lasting peace in the Middle East. A high-ranking member of the Kuwaiti royal family has returned to Kuwait. Crown Prince Saeed Al Abdullah Al Sabah kissed the ground today in his newly liberated country. Sheikh Saeed has been appointed martial law ruler by the Kuwaiti Emir. The Emir is expected back in the country in the next few days. Reports indicate Saddam Hussein's internal opponents are asserting newfound power in parts of Iraq and doing so with violence. Fighting is reported in a string of cities in southern Iraq between some of the remnants of Iraq's army and Shiite Muslim guerrillas. These unconfirmed reports come from many sources, many hoping the time is right to topple Saddam Hussein. More on the story now from correspondent Norman Reese.
Rebel leader Ayatollah Bakr al-Hakim made a rare public appearance in Tehran today to encourage the armed resistance to Saddam Hussein. He described the uprising in Basra as a sign of the people's will. Al-Hakim has led the fundamentalist opposition to Saddam from exile in Iran since his father was executed by the ruling Ba'ath Party. Reports of the turmoil inside Basra are still sketchy. Eyewitness accounts from refugees talk of widespread fighting.
The people, they don't want President Saddam Hussein. They killed the police and Arab-backed associates.
A major Western concern is that Iraq could now literally split apart, the so-called balkanization of the country. The Iranian-backed Shiites, the biggest group, trying to establish an Islamic republic in the south where they dominate, and the Kurds, who've also suffered oppression, splitting away in the north. This would leave the ruling Sunnis with a tiny portion of present-day Iraq and no outlet to the sea.
I think that the uprising or the revolution that we are witnessing these days is a reaction to Saddam Hussein's greatest folly. But I think once the Shiites will assert their point, I think that they'll try to gain greater political influence in Iraq's political life rather than go for a different state.
Meanwhile, Basra remains cut off to independent observers, the approach roads controlled by troops loyal to Saddam Hussein.
Among those reports out of Basra is one that claims the oldest son of Saddam Hussein has died at the hands of Shiite fighters.
And still to come on this International Hour, Saddam Hussein after the war. We'll talk to the former senior U.S. diplomat in Baghdad, Edward Peck, when we return.
There are still a few places scattered around our planet where you can recharge your spirit in a setting of unspoiled, unforgettable beauty. But none are as close as South Carolina. Smiling faces, beautiful places.
One in 4 adults faces the risk of heart disease from high cholesterol. A diet low in saturated fat and cholesterol with Fleischmann's Extra Light can help change those odds. Fact is, no leading spread is lower in saturated fat. Another fact, 0 cholesterol. And on top of everything, it tastes good. Fleischmann's Extra Light.
A contagious flu is still spreading. Now reported in 48 states. And the season is not over.
If you are stricken with the flu, what will you do? Doctors recommend Theraflu. Theraflu is hot liquid medicine. Strong therapy for flu symptoms. Hot liquid therapy that works fast. What will you do when you get the flu? Doctors recommend Theraflu. Strong therapy for flu symptoms.
Ziploc presents Fingerman.
Hi, I'm here to demonstrate a brand new invention. Introducing the new Gripper Zipper from Ziploc. Now the easiest closing bag there is. In fact, you can close it even if you're all thumb.
How you doing?
Yes, the zipper is grabbing hold. It's locking. Feel it close the first time, every time.
Yeah.
Ziploc bags with the new Gripper Zipper. The easiest closing bag there is.
Now that was a snap.
And now we're joined by Ambassador Edward Peck. He was the senior U.S. diplomat in Baghdad from 1977 to 1980, and we're here to talk primarily about Saddam Hussein's future, if there is a future. You heard the Pentagon briefing not terribly long ago. Yeah. 6 cities now in the southern part of the city where there is some degree or another of chaos and perhaps rebellion. What do you make of that? How do you interpret it?
It probably could be related to what they were talking about in the Pentagon briefing, a breakdown of communications, and a breakdown of command and control, and a breakdown of authority. In our own country, we've seen what can happen when authority goes and you get a part of a city gets looted or sacked, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're marching on the capital.
You don't think this is the beginning of the end for Saddam Hussein?
It's probably more like the end of the beginning, because now we move into a whole new phase. The war is over, and to see what happens from there, it depends so much on what the Iraqi people or one person in it is able and willing to do. Because Saddam has never run the country with the army. He never needed the army to stay in power. And if you see the film clips of Baghdad over the last month, you never see any soldiers, no armed troops, no control points, no tanks in the streets. They control the country entirely separate from that. It's the apparatus that he has that could still be there.
But Saddam Hussein heads a military government. The fact of the matter is he's fought or led the country into 2 wars over 10 years, lost them both, certainly has lost this one convincingly. Can he survive now?
Yes, he can. It's not really a military government. He himself is not a career soldier. People tend to forget that because you even see, Tariq Aziz in uniform. They've made themselves all into a revolution command council, but Saddam Hussein did not rise up as a soldier. He rose up as the head thug, if you will, of the Ba'athi Party, and made himself a lieutenant general in the late 70s.
Well, what's your scenario for his survival?
Well, he has the mechanism that has protected him thus far, and to have survived as long as he did in that country, it makes him a world-class survivor. He's an Olympic-level survivor. So he has the mechanisms, and as long as those are in place, you can't get at him. People have tried in the past.
If there were to be a challenge at this time to Saddam Hussein, where would it be most likely to come from?
I would suggest that it would probably come from the army with a real honest-to-goodness revolt rather than an assassination attempt. If the army were to do that, that is one of the only 2 organizations in the country which have the people in the organizational structure. The other is the party. I don't see the party doing it, but I see the army as a potential, a perpetrator of the act of overthrowing Saddam Hussein, but I don't see him going just yet. I think that he's still with us for a while, for good or for ill. And while everybody has to be concerned about what happens if he's there, you need to be almost more concerned about what happens if he isn't.
And you don't see a Falklands or Malvinas Island kind of syndrome where after this humiliating defeat, the people themselves pour out into the squares and out in front of the government ministries and demand the heads of the existing government?
No, I don't see it yet. Well, it could happen, sure, but it's not the kind of country where that sort of thing takes place. You watch how they control crowds. Remember the Western cameramen filming the bomb damage, and the crowds rushing towards the cameraman, and a policeman, just with a flick of his wrist, having them back away.
Very, very briefly, do you make anything special out of the fact that Syria and even Iran in its own way are saying that Saddam's time is limited and his days are numbered?
It's easy to put the wish. It's a little harder to see it go, and I'm sure that both of those countries are a little bit worried about what happens if he does go and the country dissolves in chaos.
Ambassador Edward Peck, former ranking diplomat in Baghdad, thank you very much for joining us. Let's go back to Catherine now in Atlanta. Catherine?
Thanks, Frank. And coming up next on Newsday, a look at the sometimes tough adjustment for soldiers on the home front. And this afternoon on Early Prime at 5 p.m. Eastern, an interview with UN Secretary General Perez de Cuellar. Well, that's it for the International Hour. At the CNN Center in Atlanta, I'm Catherine Cryer.